Good afternoon. I call this meeting of the Washington County Board of Education to order. We do have a quorum present. This time, Mr. Stan Stauffer will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and that will be followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of our agenda for this afternoon.
Madam President, I move for approval of our agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. All those in favor of approving the agenda? Thank you. 6-0 with the student member concurring. And next, approval of our minutes.
Madam President, I move for approval of the closed session minutes dated June 6, 2017.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the closed session, June 8th?
June 6th.
Oh, I'm sorry, June 6th. Thank you.
Madam President, I move for approval of the business meeting minutes dated June 6, 2017.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
June 8th.
Oh, I'm looking at,
You already did the 6th.
Oh, I did the 6th.
You did the close for the 6th. This is business meeting for the 6th.
The closed session. For the
That's a
Closed
business
session
meeting.
for the-
Approval of the business meeting minutes dated June
Oh.
6th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
For business, all right.
Then we have the special meeting 2 days
Yeah.
later. So.
Correct. Thank you, Ms.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Any additions or corrections to the business meeting minutes? All those in favor? 6-0.
Madam President, I move for approval of the closed session minutes dated June 8th, 2017.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gaspard. Any additions or correction to those minutes? All those in favor of approving the closed session minutes of June 8th? 6-0. Okay. At this time, we have public comment. I have no one signed up to speak this afternoon. Is there anyone in our audience who would like to speak during this time set aside for public comment? Okay, seeing none. We have no old business to conduct today, so we'll move to our first agenda item under new business, which is the consent agenda. Mr. Bagel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today I have 11 items for your review, the details of which were included in your packets. Staff is seeking approval for the award of RFP 2017-46 for the Barbara Ingham School of the Arts High School stair modification to AV Roth and Sons at a total cost of $46,388. The award of RFP 2017-41, professional design services for HVAC replacement and electrical switchgear replacement at Fountaindale Elementary School to Geip and Associates at a total cost of $78,231. The award of RFP 2017-47 for wall chargers and MFI certified lightning cables to Group Vertical at a total cost of $79,980. The renewal of RFP 2016-37 for heating oil to AC&T for tank wagon deliveries at a price of 0.149 cents per gallon plus the weekly OPUS price, and to Petroleum Traders Incorporated for transport carrier deliveries at a price of 0.0038 cents per gallon plus the weekly OPUS price. The renewal of excuse me, the renewal of RFP 2014-69 for athletic trainer services to Pivot Physical Therapy at a total cost of $256,414.76. The approval to utilize NJPA contract 100614 for the purchase of 105 Lenovo laptops to CDWG at a total cost of $78,750. The approval to utilize Meek contract UMD-97216 for 780 iPads to Apple Incorporated at a total cost of $229,320. The approval to utilize NJPA contract 100614 for Parallels Mac management software to CDWG at a total cost of $34,161.99. The approval of professional service for the annual maintenance of print center equipment to Canon Solutions America Incorporated at a total cost of $143,308.80. The approval to utilize the MAPT contract, contract number 2014-42 for modular partitions for Hancock Elementary School, to Duron Incorporated at a total cost of $94,006.76. And the notice of transfer of one school bus to Washington County Division of Emergency Services. And staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bakewell. Is there a motion?
You want me to do it?
Sure.
Sorry, we have to repeat everything.
Sorry.
Madam President, I move to approve the awards, renewals, and procurements for the stair rail modification at Barbara Ingram School for the Arts High School to A.V. Routh & Sons Incorporated at a total price of $46,388. Professional design services for HVAC replacement and electrical switchgear replacement at Fountaindale Elementary School to GYPE Associates Incorporated at the total price of $78,231. Wall chargers and MFI certified lightning cables to Group Vertical at a total price of $79,980. Heating oil to AC&T Company and Petroleum Traders, Inc. at the bid factors listed. Athletic trainer service to Pivot Physical Therapy at a total price of $256,414.76. 105 Lenovo ThinkPad laptops from CDWG at a total price of $78,750. 780 Apple iPads from Apple Inc. at a total price of $229,320. Parallels Mac management software from CDWG at a total price of $34,161.99. Annual maintenance of print center equipment from Canon Solutions America Inc. at a total price of $143,308.80. Modular partitions for Hancock Elementary School to Duron Inc. at a total cost of $94,006.76, and the notice of transfer of one school bus.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Discussion? Questions? Mr. Bakewell?
I just had a question. I guess Mr. Rollins can better answer this, and I'm sure the cost of this has been increased because of the involvement of the Historic Trust and everything, but I was just wondering what was precisely being done, because there wasn't any breakdown of the cost that I saw for the handrail modifications at Barbara Ingram.
So we had a concern shared by a parent on how low the historic stair rail is. When you go up the historic stair rail and you start up for the first 3 floors, of the Barbara Ingham School, the handrail feels low to what normal standards are. Actually, when you go up on the 4th floor, the new stair rail, still all wooden, still all oak, jumps up probably almost a foot to meet current code. At the time we built Barbara Ingham School for the Arts, the existing handrail, the historic handrail, was approved. You know, after further review with the city code people, they would not kind of update their approval. So we thought in the best interest of safety, we'd go ahead and make an adjustment. So what this design is for the metal work that'll be required to carry an additional stair rail that'll actually go above the historic stair rail. Historic stair rail is 6 or 8 inches wide, very beautiful. I'm a little concerned about the metal hand railing in front of it, but for safety's sake, it's just the appropriate thing to do, and that's what this portion buys.
And I apologize for not getting that question out
No.
before today's meeting. I just wondered.
Any other questions?
I have a couple questions here. On the athletic trainer services, how many trainers and approximately how many go to each school are we talking about? We
Eric's
have
here, but I'm pretty sure it's one trainer per school.
one, and are they permanently located at each school?
Yes.
They are? And what is the purpose for people out there that's wanting to, a parent, what is it?
Well,
Explain that.
they take care of the athletes from one, if there's an injury during a game, during practice, they take care of, treat it at that moment in time. They also basically maintain the athlete's health during the season. So, you know, little nagging injuries and things like that, they treat, they take care of, sort of preventative maintenance. They monitor concussions for our student athletes. They do the re-entry for concussions. So if when a student athlete is cleared from a doctor, basically they will take those athletes, allow them to put them in basically game type situations before they clear them to go back on the field. So what they've done is basically our buffer sort of between a doctor, coach, and making sure that they're prepared to go back on the field. In addition, they're on the grounds for any injuries. They've treated injuries with spectators as well that we've had.
I think with a lot of concussions, I think parents are concerned about that, and I want to make sure that they understand that's the fallback.
Yes,
So-
by having them on staff, it's taken the competitive aspect, if you will, out of, you know, a coach or even a parent at times, because sometimes the parents want the kid to go back in the game right away. They're okay, they seem fine, whereas their professional training, they know to shut them down and, you know, we need to get checked out before we can return to play.
And it's very important that the school system thinks of the child, you know, and not, you know, the game.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad to see that. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
My question's also on the bid, or not, well, it wasn't a bid, but it's a renewal for the athletic trainers. I need to be refreshed. When we first awarded this contract in 2014, was the 1% increase per year part of that approval?
No, every year there is an evaluation done based on the current conditions. So for the last couple years, it's been 2%. I think they look at kind of the market for preventative maintenance care, and this year they requested a 2%. And you know, I asked them if they could hold their price, and we met in the middle at 1%. So
Well, that was very nice of them.
yeah, you know, it's a catch-22 a little bit. They need to make sure that they have people who are interested in those jobs, so they have to stay competitive with them, you know, their rates. But we obviously don't want to pay any more than we have to.
I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Could you also explain, you answered in an email form, but could you also explain the purchase of the Apple iPads for Tech High School in Antietam?
So when we implemented the digital learning plan, part of that purchase did not include, in the initial year, a purchase for Antietam Academy and for Tech High to have iPads. We gathered up all the iPads across the system. We re-provisioned them with updated software, and we collected all of our Apple or iPad 2s and place those at Antietam Academy and Tech High. And part of that replacement cycle was in this upcoming year, when this new year started, that we'd be replacing those with updated iPads. So that was part of the original design of the digital learning plan.
Thank you.
I have a question about the modular partitions at Hancock Elementary. Having taught at Hancock, I know that it's an open space school and that at one time there were sound panels installed to cut down on the noise. How will these partitions be used to?
So a couple things are going to happen as a result of that, and Mark's here as well. We've looked through the school a couple different times at the request of the school, how we could better utilize space. A lot of the rooms are divided off using furniture. Pretty common in almost all the old schools, old open schools. I see Mrs. Fisher smiling because she remembers Clear Spring High School well, as you kind of divided your room off with carols and chalkboards and bulletin boards. So Hancock Elementary is divided off that way right now, with legs sticking out from the side of chalkboards and bulletin boards and furniture and all this kind of stuff to divide the rooms. So what will happen with the new partitions? We've looked carefully at the floor plans. We've tried to make sure that we've allowed for enough space to have a full 2-round school and the potential for, it already has pre-K, but what if we had 2 pre-K programs? Obviously, some teachers are maybe losing a little space. Some teachers are gaining space as you kind of sprawl or get shrunk, maybe as you're the new teacher. But I think they, in essence, will be a panel that would absorb sound themselves, actually the panels that separate them. We have similar panels at Hickory Elementary, probably the same company, and somewhat similar ones at Fountain Rock. Mark, anything to add to that?
I think what will happen is it'll create a safe egress at the school. It creates about 7 teaching spaces in the open area, and 3 to 4 small group instructions along with that. So I think the panels, as Dr. Michael said, will absorb sound. It will organize the whole school, keep things from out of the hallway, keeps things from encroaching on the egress, and creates really defined paths for egress to the exit doors.
Thank you.
I have just something for parents that have students in those schools, and we know the answer to this. Would you explain why you don't build a wall from the floor to the ceiling in those schools today?
Well, that particular school, the ceilings are about 30 feet high. It's an unsprinkled school. So there's no real way with the HVAC. It would take an HVAC upgrade. It would take a ceiling and lighting upgrade, sprinkler upgrade. This helps define the class, create teaching spaces so that it's not all open and loud as it normally is in an open school.
And we have other schools that are like that.
We do. Yes,
So
we do.
We're just trying to bring everybody up to the same level.
We're trying to
as
do
we
the
are.
best we can with
Yeah,
the limited
what we
funds we have.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Anyone else? Any other questions, discussion? And we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approving today's consent agenda? Okay. 6-0 with the student member concurring. Okay, our next agenda item is consideration of a donation to North Hagerstown High School. Mr. Akers, or Dr. Akers, sorry, I apologize. Good afternoon, Dr. Akers.
Afternoon, Dr. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. I'm here requesting approval on behalf of North Hagerstown High School to accept a donation of $5,434.16 from Ahold USA, known to most of us as Martin's Foods. This money would be deposited in the General Athletic Fund and would likely be used to replace uniforms.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any discussion? Any questions for Dr. Akers?
Was this run by the athletic department, that is going there to the athletic fund?
It's the A-plus program where parents sign up
Right.
and a portion of what they purchase
Right.
goes to the school, and then the school decides where it's going to put that money.
Oh, okay.
This is something other schools take advantage of too, correct? Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
North High consistently seems like it's every 4 or 5 months, we're approving about this much for North High.
Yeah, sometimes the athletic boosters do encourage the parents to sign up for that. And so that's probably why the money's going in that direction.
So we should thank those parents who are shopping
Yeah.
and helping us to raise funds for our schools. Any other questions? Any further discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Gesser's motion? 6-0 with the student member concurring. Thank you, Dr. Akers. Okay, we have consideration of the ed specs for the schematic design for the urban educational campus, the Board of Education component.
Good afternoon, President Williams and board members, Dr. Michael. On February 7th, the Board of Education approved moving forward with Bowman Development Corporation on the design of the Board of Education component of the urban educational campus. It's to be a 4-story building built between the Maryland Theater and the current BISFA building. And it was to include 16 classrooms, admin areas, a multi-purpose room, and a kitchen amongst the major components of that building. Today, we're bringing to you the fruits of that labor, the initial fruits of that labor, for your approval, the educational specs and the schematic design documents. These are the first steps in the design approval process. There'll be further steps as we move along through the process. I have with me Mr. Jeff Tedrick of Bowman Development Corporation and Mr. Brent Feit of BFM Architects, and they'll lead you through the ed specs and design that they've developed thus far with staff.
Good afternoon, board members. Once again, on behalf of Don Bowman and Bowman Development, I'd like to thank you and express our appreciation for the opportunity to partner with Washington County Board of Education on such an exciting expansion of the downtown urban educational campus. Sometimes I feel like we've been running a relay race with this project. It's been a team effort to get to this point, and we're still only about halfway into the race. So it's going to take a lot to get to the finish line. I commend Dr. Morgan for her initial efforts to create a downtown school for the arts, and then for her persistence to make this unique educational environment come to fruition. I also credit Dr. Wilcox and Dr. Michael for their ongoing dedication and perseverance to continue on that track with the next phase of the downtown campus. It's been a challenging effort, to say the least, faced with many obstacles. When completed, this project will not only be a glowing example of urban development and the envy of many school systems, it will also represent what can be accomplished with an alliance of downtown partners, along with the support of local city, county, and state. We know that the process of private-public partnership is unique in the state, and for that reason, will be the focus of many agencies statewide. We'd like to consider what we're doing as trend-setting for similar projects. We appreciate the efforts and working relationship that we've had with the Board of Education staff members. I can't compliment them enough for the support that they've given us on this partnership. We also appreciate the support of you, the board members, and the confidence that you've instilled in us for this project. We look forward to continuing our joint efforts on this trend-setting project. So as Rob mentioned, with us today is Brent Feit of BFM Architects. We bring BFM to the table for their experience in educational facilities and every bit of support that they can offer in bringing this project to you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon, everybody. This has been an effort that's probably been about 2.5 years in the making. So we're finally seeing our effort coming to fruition as a 3P partnership that we've created here. And before you, I believe you have our presentation here for the day. The first item will be a review of the educational spec. Before you is a chart that kind of explains or gives you an overview, an executive overview of the educational spec. Basically, we have an administrative area, which is approximately 2,800 square feet. There will be 16 classrooms, which total a net square footage of 14,634. A performing arts area, food service and assembly area around 4,500 feet, building services around 3,300 feet, for a grand total net program space of 27,000 feet and a gross square footage of 45,595 feet with a student roll capacity of 340. Some of the highlights you'll see as we present the floor plans will be the 16 flexible classrooms are designed to facilitate 25 students in each room. The 3,000 square foot dining. We have created a theatrical production area, which includes a wood shop in the lower level, a loading dock, which is going to be shared with the Maryland Theater. There is also connection to BISFA at the basement and first floor level through the rear stair levels and on all floors by the elevator, which will be reconfigured to be able to be opened on both sides. And there will be accessibility from the Maryland Theater on the basement, first and third floor levels. And there will also be on the second floor level access for the University of Maryland systems. As you're all aware, the expansion is located just south of BISFA and north of the Maryland Theater expansion. It will span from South Potomac Street back to the rear alley where the proposed plaza will occur. And in our northwest corner of the expansion is where we are planning on the connection to the University of Maryland system. The level you're looking at now is the lower floor level. It will basically be our mechanical and electrical room services. It will also include the wood shop. There will be costume storage for the BISFA efforts, several storage rooms, and the main MDF room. Access, do I have a cursor here? I can't. Well, anyhow, access to this basement will occur on the north side. You'll see there's a service ramp there that comes into a round area or squared off area that you can manipulate scenes and bring them back into the wood shop, and also at the mechanical room. Also, and with our interaction with the Maryland Theater expansion, they are planning on having a two-level access corridor to their north side. So that the lower access corridor to the Maryland Theater will occur in the alleyway as we know it, and there will be an access point located on the lower left-hand corner. You'll see the stair. On the main level, to our rear or west side, there's a loading dock. Now, the loading dock is going to consist of two levelers. One's a scissors lift, which will permit us access from the loading dock down to street level, and then there will be a second dock leveler that will be used to access freight trucks. Plus, there's also a two dumpster area there that'll be located off the loading dock. The loading dock will have direct access into the upper corridor of the Maryland Theater or the alleyway, and also into the kitchen. And then from there, we have access gaining into the multi-purpose room, dining room, and towards the Potomac Street, you'll see a secured lobby that is controlled by the administration area, the reception waiting area, and also a conference room for various meetings. And then there'll be toilet facilities there to support the dining room. On the second floor, we basically now are getting into our classroom space. You will see in the upper left-hand corner of the plan where access from the University of Maryland systems will make its point of contact. We have 3 classrooms to the rear, and there's also staff and planning areas that are located in the lavender-colored area with a classroom forward on the Potomac Street. Again, this space is supported by group toilet facilities with a faculty toilet in the upper left-hand corner above the academic storage. Third and fourth floor are very similar, basically classrooms, academic storage, and restrooms, and a forward classroom off Potomac Street. At that point, you will see that there's a dashed line, which will be our connection to the Maryland Theater. There will be a bridge. It will be connecting to the Maryland Theater, and that will be constructed by the Maryland Theater project. Presently, on our front elevation, what we are looking for is something that maintains the context of South Potomac Street. At this present time, we're looking at a rusticated lower level with precast trim, and then brick, and then cornice work to the top. To the rear or west elevation, We're trying to simulate the rear of the BISFA plan and to match the materials or similar materials in keeping with what has been provided at that area. You can see on the second level, there's a grayed area with an X in a white box. That is the proposed location of where the tunnel or the bridge will come in from the University of Maryland systems. Below that line, you'll see an elevation of the loading dock. Our side elevation, which would face the Maryland Theater, is the north elevation that would be looking at BISFA. Again, we'll be simulating the materials from the west elevation and tying into the BISFA details or materials. And then finally, on the south elevation, which will face the Maryland Theater, as I had mentioned earlier, we have 2 corridors that are going to be created by the Maryland Theater project that we'll be able to access, and we will be having, it's like a metal panel that will occur on the south elevation and probably several windows. We are studying the practicality of windows at this time due to the firewall requirements for that space. Questions?
Do we have a motion?
Madam President, I move for approval of the educational specifications and schematic design for the Urban Educational Campus BOE component.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Discussion, questions? I'm sorry.
Mrs. Fisher has a question.
Oh, Mrs. Fisher.
Right now, I'm looking at the first floor plan,
Okay.
and to the front, there is an administration complex. Is that an additional administration complex, or is that going to replace the administration complex that exists over in the BISFA half?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, and it'll sort of be at the discretion of the school, but this will become the main entrance of both buildings. We're going to include a secure lobby, something we don't have currently at BISFA. So whether or not the principal decides to stay there and there's an AP, it depends on the programs that come in, but it's additional admin space.
Okay, thank you. I have a second question. Looking at the front facade of the buildings, I'm curious as to why you just didn't totally mimic the BISFA front to make it seem like it's more, here it looks like it's 2 entirely different buildings rather than one school.
In order to maintain the context of South Potomac Street, these were all individual buildings which each had their own character. So if we would have mimicked the BISFA, it would have been too massive for the context of the street. So that's why we broke it up and created its own facade, if you will.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Any other questions?
Was that a requirement of the Historic Trust or anything, or?
Well, it's kind of an architectural rule of thumb, but and plus we met with the historic people, and so far they've been in favor of this elevation.
You know, I have so many questions about this, and I know I talked to my colleagues today, and you know, I don't know if a bunch of us missed this, but we don't remember this cafeteria being put in there, and we don't remember the kitchen being put in there, but we do all remember that the university partnership was supposed to have this as the gel between the school system of the University of Maryland and the Washington County Public School. That was the selling point, you know, to get everybody to buy into this. And I was told today that we did vote on this, and a few of my other colleagues, we don't remember that. But, you know, I do forget things from time to time. You know, and I want to applaud Mr. Bowman for what he has done. And because without him, I think Hagerstown would not look the way it does. And I don't want to be the person that stays or stands in the way of progress. But I surely do not remember this project having that connection. But I do remember them saying that this was a project that was going to involve the University of Maryland system to have a cafeteria and a kitchen so that we could get everybody together, and also a classroom, which would be the science labs. So I'm really concerned that in the future, there's going to be this 12th hour change, because it can happen, and I understand that. But we talk about the bridge and the connector there, and I see the word future connect, and I'm like, we're voting on this thing, and we were told that this was what the project was going to be, and it's changing. I know there's more money now being asked to be found, and that's taxpayer money. And we've already committed $4 million, and we said we're not going to commit any more. Where's the money coming from to keep adding this? And I think, that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that element of the cafeteria and the kitchen as a part of that expense, because I know what commercial kitchen equipment is, and it is not cheap. And, I think that might be a part of this sticking problem, of finding the money. And like I said, I don't want to be the person to be the lone guy out there saying, well, Mr. Gessler was the one that held everything up, because Mr. Bowman does not deserve this, and his employees do not deserve this. But I think the school system deserves to hear the project completed, of what it's going to be, before we keep nickel and diming this all the way down the road until we find out that this is going to be another $1.6 million added to the bill that nobody knows where the money's coming from. And I'm really concerned about that. I've been saying that all along, that nobody seems to know the answer. I talk to different people, and everybody gives me a different answer. They think it's going to go through. They think, we're going to be fine. But that doesn't sit well as a board member signing off on hopes and dreams. I mean, this is a good project, and we've all said we want this to happen. We've all voted to get this thing to happen. But unfortunately, it just keeps getting more question marks written all over it. And I mean, I don't see where, the partnerships are all together on the same page. So, I'm really struggling to vote for this today. That I would say, maybe we need to go back to the table and go like, everybody needs to get to this table, and we get this funding and taken care of, instead of every couple weeks we decide to change something. And so that the board knows what we're voting on, instead of we're guessing, and hope that what we put down on paper, that's going to be that way in the end. I'm just like, let's get this daggone thing done. But let's make sure that we have all the answers, that we need before we go voting on a little, the project all along. I mean, when you build a house, you know what the bottom line's going to be, maybe a little overrun here and there. But with this project, you got so many people involved that everyone is, and it's probably a logistic nightmare, for a builder to be putting 2 buildings up at the same time beside each other in a downtown less than a block from the square. Because I do not know how 2 construction companies, if that's what it's going to be, can bring their construction trailers in, 2 of them, their crews, 2 separate crews, 2 separate managers, trying to coordinate bringing equipment in at the same time with all their different products that they're wasting. I mean, where do you put this? And then you run on top of it, you're going to run into a school year. Somewhere you're going to run into school year, and you're going to have kids coming in there. I just see a logistic nightmare coming down the road for this board. I want to do this for Mr. Bowman and his employees and for the school system, but there's just too many daggone questions that aren't answered yet. And this should have been all hashed out a long time ago. And I understand that there are so many people involved, but you don't build a house unless you know you have the funds to build the house. You don't go, well, we can work harder and get extra money by getting an extra job. No, you don't do that. You just know what your budget is. And now to add, more money to this, I just don't know. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Currently, we're in a good position if we approve this today that we'd be the very first building to go up, and we would be adapting it so that we're operational even if the other buildings aren't happening yet, correct?
I think we're in a good position. I mean, what the board voted on in February was to go forward with Bowman Development Group and the design services. Our goal was to complete the design by September, October. We have a series of milestones we have to reach with the state. So each one of these approvals that the staff and Bowman Development Group brings forward to the board, that information goes down to the state for review by state agencies down there. So as long as we stay on schedule for our design part, I think we've been very, very clear with everybody that we will not go to construction without full funding. Mr. Stafford's attended a number of meetings where we've brought that topic up over and over. The scope of our project has not changed. We were told what the scope of our project was at one point, probably a little over a year ago, but it definitely has not changed since February when we itemized exactly what we wanted Bowman Development Group and their architect BFM to do. And that's the product that they brought forward today. What we've also agreed to in the MOU that's been signed by a number of agencies, including the county, is that our portion right now for the design services with Bowman is that we would pay half the design. The county commissioners are paying half the design cost. So we get to the point in October, construction money's not there, whatever. We'll have to see what happens from that point forward. It's not a position I like to be in. We'd like to be in the position of knowing where our money's coming from, but much like we're building Sharpsburg, we're in the design phase right now, but we have no guarantee that we'll have all the funds for Sharpsburg until we see it come through from the county, until we see it approved and comes through from the state. So we're in a very similar situation with this building at this point.
So we approve this today. What happens next? What becomes the timeline?
Sure. With your approval today, these documents will be sent down to the Maryland State Department of Education Facilities Branch. They'll review the ed spec and the schematic documents, offer comments for our use. And then we would also come to you with the approval of design development documents, which are pre-construction documents. So you'll have another shot at them there. Those two would be sent down to MSDE. Following that, we'd bring you a construction document approval. Each one of these approvals is also reviewed by the Advisory School Design Review Committee in the county. They did approve this design. You have that in your package. I should have mentioned that. I apologize. So we go through these 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, at which point then, with that approval and with the funding in place, we would then bid the project.
So if we don't approve this today, we're risking school funding, getting state funding?
I think the greatest risk would be a delay and a potential change in Bowman's price to us in the fact that we've kind of put them on hold. I think what I would like to see is, and to your point, Mr. Bickford, I'd like to see us be the first building up. I think we actually can help the Maryland Theater with our building being constructed first. There might be some means we can help them stay open during their construction of their building because I think the intent is to keep the theater open the whole way through the construction of a 4-story building on the front of their entire building. I think that's going to be challenging for them, but there might be a means that we can help with that if our portion of the building, if our building is up and in place before their building gets under full construction. But, I think to say time is money, I think would be appropriate, and delay would cost money at some point.
Go ahead, Mrs. Fisher.
I think I might be able to shed a little bit of light on the kitchen situation. The original hub building, of course, had a kitchen designed in it because it was not involved with this whole city thing. When the city came to us with their proposal, then whatever group of people sat down, because it was going to be cut down to 4 floors, and we talked about, of course, the kitchen or the dining facility in the other building, but the board never saw a list of what would go into the new building, the new hub, or whatever you want to call it. We didn't realize that there was still going to be a kitchen in this building until we saw these documents this weekend. We never saw a list of what was going to be in the building that was reduced to 4 floors. I have no problem with it personally, but I think that's kind of what happened. My problem is with the bridge. We voted, I don't know how long ago it's been, to do this project, but because of the way it was no longer going to be a self-contained building, and we were going to have to accept putting, at that time, the dining hall and the labs in the building that Mr. Barr and so on were handling. We voted then that if there was no bridge, there was no project for us. And I want some guarantee that that's going to happen before we get too far into the situation.
Right. I think it's shown as a future connection only because Bowman Development is not responsible for the design of that bridge. I think we've all along stated our position. Dr. Michael would back that up, that that bridge has to be there or there is no project. We know that's the view of the board, and we've brought that to every meeting with all the partners each time. Mr. Stauffer has heard us do that also. Stepping back on the kitchen, there were two things that changed from the original academic hub to the BOE component of the urban educational campus. One, of course, was the main thrust was the science labs were moving over to a STEM program that the University of Maryland is going to have in their building. So we took a fifth floor off of the original hub design and moved the science labs. That's what the bridge was for the science labs. The University of Maryland also was designing wanting to include a hospitality program. And so in having that, they also offered the use of their dining room, but not their kitchen. So in the MOU, there's nothing in there about us being able to use their kitchen. We can't use their freezers. We can't use their kitchen. It's for their hospitality. It's a teaching space for them. We cannot use it for production. So all they offered us at no cost, according to the lease that they've handed us, was a dining room that we could use as we saw fit. So based on that, we maintained the kitchen. And I think in the February 7th meeting of the Board of Ed, the board approved the MOU, and we also approved moving forward on the design. And in that consent agenda, there was a list of things that were included in the building, including the classrooms, the kitchen, the admin spaces, and other things. So it was in the consent agenda on the 7th of February, I think.
Well, that brings up another question just occurred to me. We signed, I think we signed it, an MOU with the University of Maryland for a certain amount of rent to be paid for a kitchen or a dining facility and the labs. Are they going to reduce that cost now that we're not using their dining facility?
We still intend to use the dining room.
Oh, we are?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Then why do we
This
have
one
it?
isn't big enough?
It allows float space and flexibility for the school to have diners who need a full lunch versus somebody who might be brown bagging it. They can send kids in two directions. Somebody who's coming right out of a science class might go down and decide to have their lunch there. I believe there's a small room included in the USMH building that would be a grab and go kind of situation where prepackaged but not cooked in a kitchen type food.
I'm fine with the ed specs and the schematic design. I'm looking at one of the handouts that I have that has the project schedule on the back, and it lists a demo and construction start date of January 2018. And I know, Mr. Tedrick, you mentioned that we've been talking about this now for 2.5 years. Is that? Mr. Fite mentioned that 2.5 years. It seems like we started yesterday, but I'll take your word for it that it's been.
Or 10 years ago.
You didn't have white hair then? So my question is, and I know that Bowman Construction has had years and years and years of experience in demolishing buildings and constructing buildings, but what will this mean for downtown, for BISFA, for the Maryland Theater? How, what can we expect in terms of the demolition part? I think that's the part that causes me the greatest concern, is the effect that demolition is going to have on downtown and our school and our students.
It is a challenging project, to say the least, as any downtown project is going to be, trying to work within the confines of a property line, but literally building property line to property line. We are fortunate to own some vacant space within a half a block of this location, and we intend to make that space available to whoever the successful contractor is as a staging area, so that we are not only building but compiling.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Staged materials, building products, and trailers at the same location. Obviously, the goal will be to work around the ongoing operational BISFA facility, and we have to be sensitive to our other neighbors as well, the Maryland Theater. Our work will start from the rear alley and come forward as we're demolishing. So once they chew into the building, use that term loosely, to a certain point, they'll be able to actually stage and mobilize from the backside of the property and haul out through the alley. There may be a time where, for the safety of the students, you may look to your front entrance as opposed to the rear drop-off for access to the building. But we will work the building, demolishing rear to front and then building front to rear. Try to work in waves like that to minimize the impact to everybody around us. Sections of the front sidewalk will have to be secured for safety of all downtown patrons. It's really our intent right now. Yes, we are on track with the current schedule, completion of the drawings, going out for bid the end of this year, and having a contract award by January of 18. The first thing to be accomplished is the demolition of the building.
If I may add, this is very similar when we did the South or the North Potomac Street parking deck. We had buildings that we had to tear down. We had to keep Hoffman Clothiers in business to our south, and then we had I forget what the it's the Martini Bar now that's up there. That was stayed in business, but we had to maintain those at the same time. And just as Jeff expressed, construction for the parking deck was the same way. Demolition went forward, and then construction, we had to bring precast panels in from Winchester. They came up through the alley, and the parking deck was erected east to west, and we had to maintain pedestrian traffic throughout the whole time. So it's.
Well, thank you
I
very
think
much.
a lot of our concerns as being part of the community is this isn't done too often in Hagerstown. So it's going to be an education for everybody. So, but I think the contractors that they're looking at are experienced in this, and I think, everybody's aware of the liabilities and will take precautions accordingly.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation.
I have one more thing.
Mr. Gressman.
Being an advocate for small businesses, and I hear your conversation about being careful. I mean, literally, we're going to be doing this in the middle of one school year. And, I think our children's safety is the most important. Will any of this be done in the evenings, on weekends, when there won't be as much traffic downtown? Can this be done?
So when we go to bid with our contractors, we're going to establish a timeline that we would like them to achieve. Normally, and there's a premium associated with evening work and with weekend work, and we all have to respect that. We're trying to do this project with the partnership and the method that we're doing it to keep it as economical as possible for the ultimate delivery of this project to the Board of Education. I feel confident there will be evening and weekend work to keep pace with the schedule that we're going to look for, but we're not going to be demanding that all work be done evening and weekend only.
Because I know that, the restaurants are, their livelihood is based on, that. I mean, everyone knows that I was a part of that industry. I think the owners from Ann's Plum were here when we originally, back in February. And I'm really concerned that, a few months of them having no foot traffic will put them out of business. So I think we really need to be careful, that we do allow the small businesses, the 28 South, the Bulls and Bears. I mean, even though Mr. Bowman owns that, he still needs revenue coming in there. I mean, and if we got the downtown blocked off, for hours, it deters people from coming down. And we've got to be, friendly and to that whole aspect, because not only are we going to be doing it, the Maryland Theater is going to turn around and do it again. So,
I think we're gonna, if we're gonna be the first building to do this, we have to set the stage, and because everyone's gonna be looking at us and saying, did you do it right? And there's people's that their livelihood is based on us doing it right, and the safety of the students is doing it right. So, you know, I'm gonna vote for this. I'm gonna be very, you know, reluctant because, you know, it's hard as a, you know, small business owner to sit there and go, how's this going to work? And I'm going to leave it to the experts. You know, I'm going to leave it to the Bowman folks to, you know, take care of the school system. Because, you know, if for some reason that one of those businesses close, it's going to be because of us. And I do not want to see Ann's Plum, 28th, I don't want to see anybody going out of business because of our construction of this school.
Well, Mr. Gesser, I think your points are well taken. Certainly, safety is of paramount importance to us, and we won't do anything to compromise safety. I think the other way to look at this project, if Washington County Public Schools was not erecting this building and this site, nothing's to say that something else wouldn't be constructed on this site. Totally separate of Washington County Public Schools. We'd have no say in it, no involvement other than, you know, obviously the underpinning of our building and structural integrity and safety of our students. In some ways, we're fortunate to be part of the construction of a building right next door, that we can really mitigate some of those things. I think the other thing to look at, probably the last time this was done, other than things like the parking deck and a few of the buildings that they tore down that burned across from the courthouse here recently. You know, Barbara Ingram School for the Arts was built a little over 10 years, was under construction 10 years ago. I guess we've been open 9 years, soon to be our 10th year anniversary coming up. So we've had some experience with that and how much it closed the alley and how much it constructed, you know, the upright of the building. And I think an interesting part of that building was in place and we added steel to the top and steel all the way from the ground up, concrete piers the whole way from the basement up, a huge underpinning of the basement. Right. I mean, this will be, at least at some point, new construction. There'll be demo and get down to solid earth and then start working from the ground up. So, and as Mr. Tedrick pointed out, we'll have that whole space in the back to work with. All we had to work with the back of Barbara Ingram was that little postage stamp right next to the Plum and out on the front street of South Potomac Street when we closed one lane of South Potomac Street when we put steel up, as I recall. So we're certainly sensitive to it. Student safety, downtown safety of everybody, the businesses is all very important to us. But if it wasn't us building this building, at some point someone would, or that building's going to fall down on its own from what I can see. So,
I just want to add that I make it to these meetings in the morning. I crawl out of bed about 6 o'clock and somehow get down there by 7. But I came into it late because at some point Senator Serafini asked for elected board members or members of the various boards to attend these meetings. So I go down. It's a very complex project. Senator Serafini is, and Brett Wilson, other members of the congressional, legislative delegation of the state of Maryland, are confident about getting the funding approved and everything. And every 2 weeks we have a meeting, and every little aspect of, I've heard discussion of, you know, how it's going to affect the Plum and everything and all that. Everything is discussed. I'm just optimistic that this is going to get done, and when it does get done, it's hopefully going to improve downtown Hagerstown a great deal. But I don't think Senator Serafini is going to let this to fail. It's getting a lot of attention from Annapolis, the governor's office. We've been told they're watching it closely as a model for other towns and urban revitalization in other parts of the state. So I can't see this thing failing because of that.
Okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of the approval of the educational specifications and schematic design for the urban educational campus, the Board of Education component, right hand? Okay, 6-0 with the student member concurring. Thank you. I'm going to be hoping for a mild winter since this is all going to start. The last thing you need is piles and piles of snow. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Mr. South, modifications to the FY 2018 General Fund operating budget.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Subsequent to this board's approval of the fiscal year 2018 general fund budget for the Washington County Public Schools, we have learned of two items that will require changes to that budget. As these two items are known to the MSDE finance section, they must be included in the budget report that your finance staff is required to send to the state. Without these changes to the budget, the MSDE budget report would not reconcile with the budget. Hence, the need for my request here this afternoon. The requested changes are as follows. First, there's been a one-time increase in local revenue of $53,000. This increase was derived from an increase in the county that the county government received in its disparity grant funding. And second, there was a $7,191 reduction in state funding that was reported on the latest iteration of the state aid report. These two changes resulted in a net increase in revenue of $45,809, which staff is recommending be used to bolster the resource pool. If the board approves these two requested modifications, the budget will now be budget balanced at $270,991,559. Finally, the Finance Committee reviewed this request at its June 8th meeting and recommends that the full board approve these two proposed modifications to its fiscal year 2018 general fund budget.
Thank you, Mr. South. Mr. Bickford, since this is coming out of Finance Committee, would you like to make the motion?
Certainly, Madam President. I move to approve the proposed modifications to the Board of Education's FY 2018 general fund budget.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kessford. Questions, discussion?
For those listening, would you want to explain to them what disparity grant funding is?
Disparity grant funding is funding that the county receives, not the school system, and it's related to county wealth.
Yeah.
So it's disparate amounts of county wealth, county to county, and Washington County does participate in that. I think there's about 6 or 8 counties across the state that participate, and Washington County is one of those.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve the proposed modification to our FY 2018 general fund budget. All those in favor? 6-0 with the student member concurring. Thank you, Mr. South. And you have another agenda item, which is a consent agenda.
The next item I bring to you is a consent agenda item, and it relates to certain duties that need to be approved by the Board of Education in the finance area. And with the retirement of your chief financial officer, there are numerous duties that do need to be reassigned. Many of these assignments require board approval to meet the various federal regulations and the requirements of our local banking institutions. Therefore, we are requesting that the board approve these individuals to perform the duties as follows. First of all, check signatories, and this would be for all central office bank accounts. Dr. Boyd Michael, Mr. David Brandenburg, and Dr. April Bishop. Manager of the Washington County Public School System's corporate credit card account and the Washington County Public School bank accounts would be assigned to Mr. David Brandenburg. Investment managers, Mr. Brandenburg and Mr. Jeff Prue. The RDS or retiree drug subsidy representative, Mr. David Brandenburg. The impact aid representative, Mr. Brandenburg. These requested changes were vetted through the Finance Committee at its June 8th meeting, and that committee recommends these proposed changes to the full board.
Thank you, Mr. South. Mr. Bickford?
Madam President, I move to appoint the following employees to perform the financial duties listed below effective July 1st, 2017. Check signatories will be Dr. Boyd Michael, Mr. David Brandenburg, and Dr. April Bishop. Manager of WCPS corporate credit card account and WCPS bank accounts would be Mr. David Brandenburg. Investment managers, Mr. David Brandenburg and Mr. Jeff Prue. RDS retiree drug subsidy representative, Mr. David Brandenburg. And impact aid representative, Mr. David Brandenburg.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gessert. Discussion or questions for Mr. South? If not, we'll move to the vote. So we're moving to appoint those employees to take over some responsibilities from Mr. South. All those in favor? 6-0. Did you have your hand up? Oh, okay. Thank you.
When you gotta start wearing shorts and t-shirts to work?
One of the gentlemen at Scout meeting last night asked me if I had started wearing shorts and flip-flops yet. I said, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, I was gonna say, I look forward to that, but okay. And you have something else for us, Mr.
Yes,
South?
ma'am, I do. Regulation DB-R requires that each year the board must adopt a budget calendar to set broad milestones for the development of the following year's budget. To facilitate this process, staff has prepared a proposed fiscal year 2019 general fund budget calendar for your review. This year, the timeline will be similar to the one that was used to develop the fiscal year 2018 budget. Specifically, the calendar maintains 3 budget work sessions as requested by the board. The first state aid report is expected in late January, and the presentation of the fiscal 19 budget to the county commissioners is tentatively scheduled for late March of 2018. It's important to note here that any post-January deliverable dates are predicated upon timely receipt of the state aid report, over which WCPS has no control. Finally, when the Finance Committee reviewed the proposed fiscal year 2019 budget calendar at its meeting on June 8th, it suggested the addition of a board retreat over the summer to discuss system goals and objectives. The committee reasoned that a retreat would provide better direction from the board to both the budget and the master planning processes. Having made that addition, the committee recommends that the full board adopt the fiscal year 2019 general fund budget calendar.
Thank you, Mr. South.
Madam President, I move to approve the proposed FY 2019 budget calendar as a general guideline for development of the fiscal 2019 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. South. For questions for Mr. South or discussion? Okay, then we'll move for approval to vote. 6-0. Student member concurs. And you have something else
And
for
I
us,
am back.
Mr. South.
Man, get it all done in his final moments.
Going out with a bang. Earlier today in closed session, the board discussed a candidate for membership on one of its advisory committees. At this time, I'm requesting that the board approve that proposed candidate for membership.
Madam President, I move to approve the proposed candidate for membership on a Board of Education Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there any discussion or any questions for Mr. South? Okay, so we're moving to approve the proposed candidate for membership on the Board of Education's Advisory Committee. 6-0.
Madam President, while we have Mr. South here, is it okay if I take a moment of personal privilege?
Absolutely.
It's been an honor to work with Mr. South for these many years. I know board members will have comments later. At our principals meeting most recently, we recognized Donna Newcomer and Jeff Stauffer, longtime employees, with just a little frame certificate that we have, just kind of as a remembrance of here in Washington County Public Schools. And I just asked staff to run up on my desk and grab one we have here from Mr. South. And Chris just notes that for recognition of your years of service from 1995 to 2017, And we're just very grateful and appreciative to your service. And on behalf of the board, if it's okay, I'd like to present that to Mr. South this time. While you're here.
That was unexpected. But as a numbers person, it would not, I cannot leave without telling you that I've punched a few numbers over the last couple of weeks. And over the last 21 years, I have attended over 1,000 Board of Education meetings. That includes business meetings, closed sessions, and work sessions. Over 250 Finance Committee meetings, over 60 Budget Advocacy and Review Committee meetings, and over 40 Audit Committee meetings. And my department has been audited over 50 times. It's been a good 21 years. Thank you. I have sincerely enjoyed working with this board as I have with many boards before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Dr. Michael, it's been a pleasure working with you, even this short period of time that I've worked with you.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
I heard
You'll
you
be
running for the
missed.
board. Running for the board in 2018.
I haven't gotten that email yet.
I think 1,000 board meetings, he's had enough punishment. I think, I don't know.
Probably.
Board members, we're going to make a change to our agenda. We have committee members who are here from the Diversity Ad Hoc Committee who are going to do an update for us. So we'll move to that report to the board. So I'd like to invite Dr. Pugh and the members of the committee who are here today to present.
Thank you for adjusting. I figure they've been here since 1, so they're probably ready to go. Here today with me, I have Rabbi Ari Plost from our synagogue, and he's also the incoming president of the Hagerstown Area Religious Council, which represents 35 different faith groups. He's been instrumental in the work in our committee. I also have Paula Moore with us. She's representing our supervisory group. We actually, by action of the board, were established in October 18th of 2016 through a report that was created by the board to establish a committee to study diversity and what we could do specifically to improve our retention and promotion. There are 2 reports due, established through that committee. One is today. This is our update to you, and the final is due by December. The term of the committee, each of our members, expires when you accept our final report, which we anticipate to be well before the December deadline. The charge that we were given, I'll let...
Before I make my comments, just want to offer words of blessings and opportunity, how proud we are of Erica Greenwald. She's one of my confirmands, and I know how much we've all benefited by having her part as this group here, and how cherished we are, and to see the fruits of your labor as you move forward, Erica. In terms of the charge of this group, what comes to mind is a short tale from my ancient tradition of a sage who was walking along the road, and before him he saw a man, somewhat middle-aged, planting a carob tree. And he turns to the man and says, how many years will go by before that carob tree bears fruit? And the man pauses and responds, 70 years. And the sage asks him, how can you be certain after 70 years that you will still benefit from the fruits of that carob tree? And the man answers, when I entered into the world, there were already carob trees from which I could benefit. The labor that we are engaged in is one that does not necessarily in the immediacy serve our needs, nor does it, we believe, can it be undertaken with success without recognizing that the issues that we're addressing are long in coming and will require years and years of nurturing and sustainability to see their ultimate fruits. And I can say myself, as living in South County on 10 acres of land, I have many trees. And as much as I try to sustain those trees and take care of those trees, sometimes, as you all know who have trees yourself or neighbors with trees or see trees that you treasure, that no matter any of our efforts, those trees are connected into a biodiversity system. And sometimes they need the support and the nurturing and the engagement of that biodiversity system in a healthy way in order for them to grow and maintain themselves and for those fruits to be present. And I think that when we thought of this charge in terms of its language, what it's trying to suggest to us is that we all benefited from teachers, parents, that were our guiding influences in our lives. Our schools are critical places that we gained opportunity from. And the world that we exist in today is so complicated, so difficult, so many challenges are presented that we believe, I think all the members of the committee and the group believe, that it's our responsibility and obligations as members and representatives of the whole of the community to try and do what we can to be in partnership and collaboration and to have a conversation that can be ongoing in terms of how we can all work together as one community to make sure that we have a forest that truly benefits all of our children. We have a couple of focus areas that we've identified as part of this charge, which suggests that the schools should not be existing in isolation of the larger community. And we'll address that a little bit later on in our presentation.
So in terms of background, the members were selected, 15 members, to serve. Those members, many of whom are here, if they would please stand. Our whole front row. Aren't they good? I do appreciate their time and energy and effort because they have been those that have been able to attend in a steadfast way. But we made sure that we were representing various faiths, various groups in ethnicity, alternative lifestyles, and people who could bring a various perspectives. Representing, we have members of the prison system, members of the police, members of education, parents, grandparents, higher education partners, community partners, and teachers. So with that, I serve as the ex officio member to try and coordinate and make sure that the group has everything that it needs to continue moving forward.
As a committee, we've met as a large group on 5 different occasions in the evenings. And we also have subcommittees where we have chair people of each subcommittee, of which there are 3. And in between our whole group meetings, we've had individual meetings. So in some cases, we've been meeting twice a month. Sometimes the subcommittee meetings are held in person, and other times they're held virtually or electronically. At our very initial meeting, Dr. Pugh and Mrs. Francisco created some norms for the group and modeling best practices of equity and equality. We worked collaboratively as a group to look at those norms to determine what would be the optimal work environment that would make sure that all members are treated equally and respectfully and responsibly within the group. And these are the norms that we came up as a group on that initial meeting. So that's actually the first work product that we completed together as a group.
After we established norms, it was important to the group to really be able to use their various experiences and backgrounds in our community to identify some of the potential challenges to anything that we would come up with in terms of a recommendation. So they had some 3 critical questions. What are challenges to consider when enhancing educational opportunities, including a focus on equity and the achievement gap? What are some challenges to consider when identifying effective practices to enhance employment opportunities, including recruiting, retaining, developing, and promoting a diverse and inclusive workforce? And the third question was, what are challenges to consider when identifying effective practices to establish a more culturally inclusive community, focusing on things like enhancing the arts, cultural opportunities, affordable quality housing options, and improved transportation options? And I think we picked the right group because they brainstormed a list in almost immediately of things that would be challenges for us as we begin to think about what our recommendations would be. So that's where we began our work, as identifying what the challenges for our community are. We also then divided up under those 3 questions and said who has a particular interest, who has a particular background or experience in those areas. That's created their subgroups. We had a workforce opportunities, education opportunities, and community opportunities. And those with different experiences in each area were invited to join the groups. Then the methodology, consistent with several other focus groups that you've had in the past, we really began with developing our foundations, our understanding of what the task was, what it was we were being asked to study and to come up with. We also learned to meet each other and focus a little bit on our own relationships and backgrounds, because each of us came to this with a different perspective. To begin to develop a shared understanding, we started to read some of the research, reading a lot, and we had various members. Dr. Alexander put in a number of research articles that we could read and really begin to form our own understanding of some things that you might do to impact positively the diversity. We also then created work plans along each of those areas. Each group created a work plan that spoke about what might be your recommendations, what would be a rationale. We really wanted to give you ideas that would be feasibility, what's feasible, and what's possible for us to do. So,
as far as a approach of several focus areas, again, it's trying to reach towards that charge that we were given of looking at the school within a context holistically of the whole community, and also trying to be very focused on the fact that the students that go to those schools, and being a student-centered approach, and their families don't exist in isolation. When they walk through those doors and when they leave those doors, they are embraced by a larger context. So in the first area, in terms of creating a welcoming and safe and inclusive environment, we realized that some of our children, when they are going through that school system, some of them come from underrepresented communities, and they may be facing very severe mental health challenges and other areas that are impacting their entire approach to education. If you've had a traumatic incident that just happened in your community or to your family, even that morning or the day before, and your teacher, your counselor, or your school is unaware of it, or if there's no auxiliary services that reach in and reach out to be able to provide a context and a support to that student, it can really affect not only their learning environment of the student, but it can affect the entire culture and success of the school. So trying to really focus in on what are the factors that in an area of severity can really impact a student, and that those factors are not always, in fact, frequently don't just emerge from the school environment itself. A second area is the understanding that learning can happen in many places, in many environments. And we're very fortunate in Washington County to have many mechanisms and frameworks in order to provide educational support beyond the school system itself. And in addition to that, the school systems have the opportunities themselves to lift up and to encourage and enhance student learning by having additional educational opportunities across the lifespan of that student. So how can we work collaboratively to make sure that those opportunities are made available, and to make sure that the students have the best access to those opportunities? A third area is we're incredibly fortunate in Washington County. As a rabbi of the only Jewish community here, I cannot tell you how incredible privilege and benefit it is both for myself and the community to serve as the rabbi of the only Jewish community here in Washington County, not just because it's an exciting environment where the Jewish community has been here for over 120 years, but to be part of the tapestry of diversity of the faith community here in Washington County. We know each other, we embrace each other, we support one another, and we are stronger because of the diversity of our faith communities. And I think that's reflective of our community as a whole. I'm really proud of Washington County that it has a lot of diversity across many different frameworks, and to the extent to which the faith community, other communities can be a leader and a supporter to how to engage in conversation across places of difference. I think that is an area where our students, as they come into the world, are only going to engage in that conversation more and more. So if we can prepare them with those insights from the strengths that our community already has, both historically and existing, I think we're only really giving them the best of what we have here. The last area might seem rather obvious, but I think in terms of students, I think we all agree that the biggest impact on a student is the teacher in that classroom. And those teachers don't exist in isolation, as you all know, as you're probably well familiar, more than I am as leaders in education. They have peer groups, they have communities that they're a part of. And to the extent to which we can not only invite in, but retain teachers that are reflective of the demographics of the communities that they're serving, and sometimes can give an opportunity to a population that's rather homogeneous to tell experiences or to be a face or an identification marker for those for a different community that they would otherwise not meet, I think can be a huge advantage towards their experiencing both the students and the entire cultures of those settings, the benefits of having an engagement in a personal, ongoing way through their teachers that reflect that. That's not always easy to try and attract teachers like that and retain teachers like that. But I think if we work intentionally, that's something that the larger community can be an asset to the school system in helping to achieve. And I'd just like to say finally, you know, everyone we've had great support from the staff here. Really, we couldn't do the work that we do without their ongoing setting benchmarks and milestones for us. Always being a reservoir of a place of knowing that there's a knowledge base and knowledge capital that we don't have because we're not educators. But in addition to that, I just have to say, you know, all the people in this group are very busy people. They're obviously not getting paid, and usually the organizations or the groups that they're representing themselves are offering up these individuals to be here because they care about the school system, and it's been an incredible privilege to be part of that group. I think there's real bonds that are established there, and I think they care tremendously about the work that they're undergoing, and they're really I think, very optimistic and confident that this is not just a presentation for a one-time set of goals or objectives, but an ongoing conversation that we'd like to continue well into the future. Thank you very much.
And at the end, we still have work to do. So we still owe you a full report. We still owe you all of the research put together in a way that is easy to understand, digest, and act on. And because that is something that this group is adamant about. Many of the members of the group have actually served on the initial Minority Achievement Task Force, and then there was another diversity group. It was Choose Civility, I think we came up with at that time. So this is an issue that's been studied in Washington County multiple times, numerous ways. Many of the people who are in this committee were parts of that and are adamant that our work result in something that is actionable for you. So we're going to do our best to make sure that you have great recommendations, you have the rationale, you have the identified opportunities and challenges already laid out, and that those are research-based strategies. So our hope is to actually finish in early fall. We have now, with the focus areas, an ability to go through and make very specific strategic recommendations to you for each of those big areas. So at this point, we would take any questions or guidance that you might have.
Just Alpha.
Could we have the members in the audience tell us their names?
Oh, do you want to come up?
I don't know them.
Let's have everybody come up. Introduce yourself.
Afternoon. My name is Terry Moore. I am currently teaching at Washington County Technical High School in the English department, and I'm also working on my doctorate of education in diversity in literature. So this is kind of an area that I'm very passionate about and also doing intense research on.
Go ahead. Hello, I'm Dana Petney. I'm the homeless coordinator for Washington County Public Schools.
I'm James Jenkins. I'm the PR manager for Washington County government.
Dr. Tom Alexander. I'm a 42-year veteran of the Hagerstown Police Department and also a faculty member at the University of Maryland College Park, where race in the criminal justice system is one of the areas that's my expertise.
You're still on the police force?
Yes, sir. As of June 30th, I just finished my 42nd year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the group or for Dr. Pugh?
I guess I have one question. I think originally when we had put this ad hoc committee together, we were looking at the diversity in the classroom and to see how we could specifically help those students of maybe at North High relate more to their teachers, South High relate to some of their teachers. I hate to say, 3/4 of a year down the road, we're going to get a report. Is there something that you can tell us now that can give us a little hope of, that we're going to be seeing some teachers that are going to reflect the student populations of these schools? Some ideas of how we're going to get there?
Operationally speaking, I think you just heard about talking about what we would do in human resources in terms of recruitment. We are actively recruiting members. We're going to the different colleges that we know could produce teachers who are like our students. Other things that we're doing for the students that we are going to come out with as specific recommendations, some of it is about access too. So there's a lot to diversity, and sometimes our students who are underrepresented in the higher classes are only underrepresented because no one has ever asked them to consider taking a more challenging course. So we have some ideas, some specific things that we would be recommending for how we could really get to know our students and understand what their barriers are to availing themselves of those opportunities. In the larger context of it, our community has to be a place that'll attract a variety of diverse individuals who have the training and resources necessary to be a public school teacher. It's a very challenging job, and we think our community is a great community, but one of the things that we can do is really work to highlight the fact that we are celebrating diversity as our community does.
I've been in Washington County for about 4 years now. And when I came to Washington County, I stepped right into an existing community, obviously because I'm the rabbi. So I already had a social network. I already had access points and leadership opportunities that were presented to me. But all the time, my community, I'm proud to say, is that we've grown from about 150 to about 250 people, I'd say, since I've been here. And a lot of those people don't come from Washington County. They're coming to the synagogue from Frederick or Montgomery County or West Virginia or Pennsylvania. And some of them have young children. And the question would be, how can I encourage somebody like that to move to Washington County? And also, when you have a new person coming to the community, how can we make sure that they feel engaged and attached? And that the synagogue isn't the only vehicle to have that glue. So both for the teachers we're trying to recruit, as well as the students and the families that are here, I think not just obviously for the Jewish community, but for the entire faith community and larger framework, it's really important that the school system is integrated in a collaborative way, that we represent one community, one unified community, one diverse community, but one that is this speaks to the values and experiences and concerns of all of its community members. And I think when you have that reflected in the school system in a real way, we'll have kids that feel that type of support, and we'll have teachers that not only want to come here but want to stay here after coming here. I mean, part of it is the intentionality of what we're doing to get them, but part of it is also trying to find ways that systematically can connect the school system with the larger community.
I would also say the intentionality of the makeup of the group as well. We spent several of the first couple of meetings just talking about what is diversity, what is the definition of diversity. And initially, I was on the former diversity committee, and race was a big component of what diversity is. And with our group, we're coming up with a broader definition of diversity, with diversity of thought and orientation and religion, coming from poverty, single parents, people with different walks of life who have walked in different kinds of shoes, just like our students. So making sure that we're really being inclusive of everything that can be diverse, and not just focusing on one area, because I believe our larger goal here is to have a welcoming environment where everybody feels like they belong.
I'd like to thank the committee that you have here today. I see that you've had 6 meetings. Attendance haven't been all that great, and that's a little disappointing because we appointed these people. The first meeting you had 14, and it pretty much never got above 9 after that. So I just really applaud the people that came today, the people who have been coming to these meetings, because I know it's difficult. Life is a struggle. Everyone's got things going on, but this is so important to our schools and our future. I see the benefit, of this struggle, that, we are going to continue to have this, and I just hope in the future that the seeds are planted, that we can continue to grow, and that this goes away, in the future. I don't know if it will or not, but I sure hope that it does. I hope that we have diversity through all of our schools for years and years and years to come, so that we can continue to reach every student in every walk of life that will come to our schools, and that we don't miss a beat. And that's why I say this is so important now. I think, this committee that's meeting, as this ad hoc committee has been appointed and the charge has been brought to them, it is so important. And maybe they don't see the importance from my heart, but I see it in the schools, and they need it. And so I thank each one of you that came today to give a report. So thank you very much for what you do, your time and efforts, and I applaud all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you've done and for the work that you will do. I look forward to hearing your recommendations and seeing you again in sometime after fall.
Yes. We're shooting for end of October, early November. Might be a little ambitious, but it will be before December.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And thank you for waiting so patiently. We'll move on. We'll go back to the agenda as originally written, and we'll pick up on the consent agenda that Mr. Trotta is going to be bringing forth that deals with policy.
Good afternoon. Over the past 2 years, the Policy Committee has undertaken a comprehensive review of Section I of the Policy Manual, which is entitled Instruction. The goal has been to examine policies that have not been examined over several years. During calendar year 2016, the Policy Committee reviewed Policy IGDF and Policy JLA, which have the same exact wording and are entitled Fundraising in School-Sponsored Activities. The committee in 2016 shared a working draft of the revised policy with principals, school-based groups, parent organizations, and booster groups, and placed working drafts of the proposed policies and exhibits on the school system's website. The committee solicited comments from the school community with regard to the proposed changes and reviewed those changes and comments at its public meetings. A first reading of the revised policy was conducted on September 6, 2016. Based upon the comments that were offered by the community, it was very clear there was confusion among the various organizations and clubs as to which particular sections of the policy applied to their particular organization. The policy committee discussed this during its meeting on September 20th, 2016, and agreed to separate the policy into 3 separate and distinct policies. Those 3 policies, which also have accompanying exhibits, are as follows. Policy JJE, entitled School-Based School Organization Fundraising Activities, which provides guidance to school-based organizations and clubs, such as the Chess Club and the French Club. Policy KB, entitled Incorporated Organization Fundraising, which provides guidance to organizations that are incorporated. And finally, Policy KBA, entitled Unincorporated Organization Fundraising Activities, which provides guidance to organizations that are not incorporated. On May 9th, 2017, the committee shared an updated working draft of the proposed policy and exhibits with principals, school-based groups, parent organizations, and booster groups, and placed the working drafts of the revised policies and exhibits on the school system's website. The committee requested comments from the community with regard to the proposed changes, and it reviewed those during its meetings conducted in 2017. Just want to provide you with some background concerning the policies. Each of the policies include a purpose and background clause. The policies define certain key terms. For instance, the terms school-based student organization, incorporated organization, and unincorporated organization are defined in the policies. The policies also explain what financial standards these organizations must adhere to. The policies have been modified based upon the response that were offered by the community. For instance, the policy regarding incorporated organizations now states that if the organization submits a formal financial report to its state or local organization, Internal Revenue Service, or State of Maryland, that such a report may be submitted in lieu of preparing a separate new financial report or having an audit conducted. I next wanted to talk briefly about the exhibits that accompany the policy. Exhibit 1, which is common to all 3 of the policies, must be completed by the organization, and it addresses the fundraising activity the organization tends to pursue. The activity must be approved by the school principal. Exhibits 2, 3, and 4 appear in the policies that concern incorporated organizations and organizations that are not incorporated. Exhibit 2 must also be completed by the organization, and it is a request to be recognized as an entity that may engage in fundraising activity. This form must also be approved by the school principal. Exhibit 3 provides general information to an organization about the content of a typical financial report. And finally, Exhibit 4 provides information on suggested agreed-upon procedures that an organization may utilize in lieu of a formal audit. I next want to cover the recommendations that the Policy Committee is offering to the Board of Education. The first recommendation is that the current policies IGDF and JLA be rescinded. Next, it is recommended that the board approve the first reading of policy JJE and exhibit JJE-E, policy KB, and the 4 exhibits that accompany that particular policy, policy KBA, and the 4 exhibits that accompany that particular policy. Going forward, if the Board of Education approves the recommendations that are being offered by the Policy Committee, The committee is recommending that school principals, school-based groups, parent organizations, and booster groups be informed of the new requirements, and that these new requirements go into effect during the 2017 or prior to the 2017-2018 school year. We're glad to respond to any questions that you might have, and I welcome comments from the members of the policy committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Mrs. Fisher, as chair of the committee.
This is a long one. I move to approve the first reading to rescind policies IGDF and JLA entitled Fundraising in School-Sponsored Activities. And 2, to approve the first reading of proposed policy JJE, School-Based Student Organization Fundraising Activities, and proposed exhibit JJE-E, Activity or Program Approval Form, proposed policy KB entitled Incorporated Organization Fundraising Activities, and the proposed exhibit KB-E1, Activity or Program Approval Form, the proposed exhibit KB-E2, the Authorization Denial of an Incorporated Organization, the proposed exhibit KB-E3, a Sample Financial Report, and the proposed exhibit KBE4, Suggested Agreed Upon Financial Procedures for Incorporated Organizations. And proposed policy then, KBA, Unincorporated Organization Fundraising Activities, with its proposed exhibit KBA-E1, Activity or Program Approval Form, proposed exhibit KBA-E2, Authorization or Denial of an Unincorporated Organization, proposed exhibit KBA-E3, a Sample Financial Report, and proposed exhibit KBE4, Suggested Agreed Upon Financial Procedures or for Unincorporated Organizations.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Mrs. Fisher, would you like to speak to this motion?
We were working on the section of our policy book that does contain these policies when we discovered a problem at one of our schools, I think most of you realize, had to do with embezzlement of funds from a school organization. And that convinced us that we needed to really look at this policy closely. It was originally just one policy. And try to build as many safety features into the policy, not only to protect the school system and the schools, but also to protect the individual organizations that work so hard for the schools to which each one belongs to provide additional materials or activities and events for our students. And so we did a great deal of discussion, of meeting with members of the public who work in these organizations. It's been a very lengthy activity, but I think we finally did the right thing in dividing it into the 3 policies. One policy did get cumbersome, and as Mr. Trotta mentioned, some of the individuals were getting confused as to which specific items were required of them and which weren't. So dividing it into 3, I think, will be very helpful, make it clear, and obviously less paperwork for those people to deal with. Because it's been revised many, many times, I think we finally got it really down correctly and right, and I strongly recommend this set of policies and their exhibits to my colleagues.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Any other discussion, comments, or questions?
I'm just glad we're finished working with this policy. We spent a lot of time on this.
Yes, and we have a lot more to do.
Right. Yes, I, as a longtime member of the policy committee, I don't know in all my time on the board if we've spent as much time on any group of policies or one particular topic, addressed one particular topic, and had as much input from stakeholders as we have on these policies. So a lot of time, a lot of thought has gone into this, and thank you, Mrs. Fisher, for your work, and Mr. Trotta for your fine work on getting us to this approval of the first reading. So
I will say that we did have one project that was, it didn't take as long because it wasn't spread out. We worked mainly over a summer, but it was not only policy committee members, but also outside individuals. And that's about yay thick, and it has to do with charter schools.
Oh, okay. Well, that was before my time, so. Yes, Ms. Greenwald.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'm looking at school-based / student organization policy JJE. Under policy statement / procedures A1, it says here that door-to-door solicitations are prohibited for elementary school students and are discouraged for secondary, but are permitted with parental permission. What exactly does that mean, parental permission? Is that like a note, or like, can you operationalize a little bit on what that means?
The starting point on this was there was quite a bit of discussion by the policy committee, and at first there was it was recommended that all solicitation be prohibited, and they finally settled on it should be elementary school students. As far as the secondary school students, they felt that they were of such an age that they shouldn't be prohibited from engaging in that kind of activity, but they felt that parental permission was necessary. There's no requirement that be, there's nothing in writing that's required. That would be something that at the school level, we would expect the school principal to make it clear to students and parents that you need the permission of your parent to engage in this activity.
And I had one other question. On that subsequent exhibit, it's here for Part B, it's like the approval denial of the school principal. Is there any appeal process that is set up or that will be set up, perhaps in regulation, if a principal were to deny what a club is asking approval for?
With regard to any decision that's made at the school-based level, there is a process to be followed with regard to any decision that's made at that level that a party might disagree with. So in this particular case, the appeal would go to Dr. Akers at his level. If the individual was not pleased with that decision, it would go to Dr. Pugh at this point in time, and could ultimately make its way to the superintendent, and then to the local Board of Education, and then to the State Board of Education. So that's the typical process that's followed if an individual is displeased with a decision that's made at the school level. That would apply to issues even, there are cases before the State Board where parents want their bus stop moved 20 feet away from where it already is, and that goes all the way to the State Board if a party is inclined to pursue that decision that's made at the school-based level.
Mrs. Williams, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
The last 2 school years in the fall and winter before Christmas, one school in particular had some questionable fundraising, and they used a local fundraising group's name, which is a national known group. Parents contacted myself and asked about this fundraising, and I contacted the local gentleman who was in charge of this, and he knew nothing about it. So I contacted the superintendent at the time, this was 2 years ago, and he said he'd take care of it. Last year, around the middle of December, I get a phone call from this national director saying that he was going to file some kind of whatever, appeal or something to the national, because this teacher was using the name for getting gifts and sending them out of state. And it was a large sum of money involved. and along with gifts. And I, again, spoke to the superintendent last year, and he said it was handled. I'm wondering if there's something in a policy somewhere that says that we cannot allow groups to give outside of the state if there's already an organization within the state, and them using the name, and I'll just say it was Toys for Tots, and using that and then taking the toys out of this area, because the parents that were contacted said they thought they were giving to Toys for Tots in Washington County. And ultimately it wasn't. It was going to a Virginia or lower West Virginia area. Is there something that we can back that up now?
First of all, I wasn't aware of that situation.
I'm sure you weren't.
But the new policy, I think we clearly addressed that, and that is, if it's a school-based organization, and that would be a teacher, that covers teachers, they would first have to go to their school principal. And the school, under the way this policy is now structured, they'd have to submit information about that, information about the fundraiser. If they're going to use the any school or school system name as sort of the selling point for someone to give a donation. So if they're going to use a local school system or the Board of Education or the school system as we're collecting this for the school system or a particular school, they first need the permission of their school principal under this new policy. They have to get that in writing. They have to submit the request. The principal would have to approve it. Now, as far as we did, as a matter of fact, at our last policy committee meeting, we made it clear that gifts that are solicited on behalf of the school system or a particular school are held in trust by the person or entity on behalf of the school. And this was a question that really came up with regard to the boosters, as they buy a great deal of equipment. It's a donation to the school. Dr. Akers often comes to the board, and the board accepts those gifts. But they're actually held by those organizations and used by those organizations in their fundraising activities. The policy makes it clear that they're holding it in trust for a particular school or the school system. So what you just described would not be permissible under the policy that's now under consideration.
Good.
Any other questions?
I have some questions.
Mhm.
Oh, hold on. Took my mic off, sorry. I'm just curious about elementary schools in particular, thinking back to my days in elementary schools and the fundraisers we did. What are some previous fundraisers that were traditional at elementary schools that will now go away, or what might continue?
I'm not aware that that would have an adverse effect on anything that's currently being done, to my knowledge. And I would defer to some of the educators on the board. And quite frankly, and I appreciate the thanks that Mrs. Williams had given to me earlier, but there were a number of people that worked on this with us, and one of them was Dr. Akers. He's extremely knowledgeable about what actually happens in the schools, and he was very helpful. He was a very helpful resource. Chris South and David Brandenburg helped us with many of the exhibits that dealt with the financial aspects, and Jamie Brown assisted us with making the many changes and modifications that we made. But to my knowledge, it would not have an adverse effect in any way upon what's currently happening.
I can think of an example, for instance, in my neighborhood, some of my neighbors' children have come over to our door to sell pizzas.
Right,
You take an order for it, and they deliver it a week or so later. This policy would prohibit those elementary students from doing that themselves. If whichever organization was doing that still wanted to continue, they'd have to have the parents do it.
Okay.
Or I guess maybe if there was an older sibling in the family, he or she maybe could get permission to do it from the parent to the school. But
So the spirit of this is we're preventing kids on their own independently from going and asking for money.
right, and we
Yeah.
had a situation with that also where Tag Day kids went to a door and the guy came out with a gun.
Ooh.
So we want to protect our students as well.
But if it was like a pizza fundraiser with the PTA, it would just have to have some adult supervision. Okay, that makes sense to me. And then the only other one was raffles. So, I mean, I can think of a few years back, we sold raffle tickets because someone donated a trip, and everybody sold raffle tickets. And would that be prohibited at this point?
I'm looking at the policy on incorporated organizations, and the same wording appears for unincorporated associations. It's on page 4. It is entitled Fundraising Activities, and you'll see subparagraph 3, gaming events. And we spent a great deal of time developing this language. We examined what they're doing in Charles County. But really, the overarching concern when it comes to raffles is that Maryland law governs gambling. And any game of chance is a gaming activity. And as we researched this, what we found, surprisingly to me, is that every jurisdiction in Maryland has a different set of rules when it comes to gaming. So we crafted this language to make sure that the students in the school, if there's some type of activity, it can't take place at the school. Students cannot be involved. There's also a provision in Maryland that you cannot hire a professional, if you're a not-for-profit, to sort of run your gaming activity. You must run your own gaming activity. That's one of the provisions in Maryland's criminal code. So we think we set forth a prescription that will provide the necessary guidance that individuals will not find themselves in a difficult situation where they're trying to raise money for charity, but there are existing laws that they have to comply with.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, they can still have a raffle or gaming, but it can't be on school property. There's a set of like 5 rules. If you follow those, you're all right.
Okay.
And we have in the policy, as a matter of fact, set forth in detail, it's intentional, the various provisions of the criminal code that apply to gaming activities.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the vote on Mrs. Fisher's motion. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. 6-0 with the student member concurring.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is Dr. Jeff Gladhill. Not that you're the agenda item, but you're bringing us the agenda item.
Either way works. We are here today to request approval for the fiscal year 2018 local application for federal funds. And I just provided a little bit of information so you had some background. This year we're seeing an increase of 46 students that are eligible with an IEP or individualized education plan. That's an increase of overall funding of about $3,800 and a decrease of about $41 per student in funding. In your packets, you had information regarding the last 3 years just to kind of show any patterns over time. We broke it down in these 4 categories for each year, and it stayed relatively the same with about 96% of our money going towards direct supportive staffing. With that being said, I'm willing to entertain any questions you have and request approval of this agenda item.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So move.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion?
I wouldn't exactly call this a little bit of information.
A lot of it's driven by the
Took
state.
a while to look at this. It came in the packet.
Included in it is our staffing plan that we're required to do each year too, versus doing it 2 different times. We always put it together to save time.
Thank you.
So I would say it's a pretty hefty document.
I think.
A lot of thought that went into that, I'm sure. Okay, Mrs. Fisher.
I don't know if you happen to know this off the top of your head, Jeff, or not. It says an increase of 46 students eligible for an IEP. Do you know how many total students roughly we have that operate under an IEP
Currently,
each
right
year?
now, it's around 2,270.
Wow, okay, thanks.
That's not counting our birth to 5 students.
And this is just a portion of our funding for special
Yes.
education, correct? Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to the vote for approval. All those in favor? Okay, thank you, 6-0. Student member concurs. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Gladhill. And that brings us to the interim superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Williams. Today, we're excited to bring to the board kind of a new program we have. Since my appointment to the superintendent role, I've been working a great deal with a wide variety of people to talking about reading in particular. Laura Hanks is probably tired of trying to teach me all there is to know about teaching reading. I know that I'll never live up to her expectations of what she's trying to teach me so far, but
Getting there.
yeah, I'm making progress. I think I might need Jeff's help maybe a little bit, but very, very passionate about helping our students achieve their reading goals, preparing them for the future. Very difficult to understand what the 21st century workforce is going to look like, especially for our students, and I've described this over and over to people. You know, I believe workers of the future are going to work not 30 years, but probably more like 40 or 50 years as life expectancy continues to increase. The workforce changes. For our kindergarten students, they're still 12 years away from just joining the workforce, which yet is 30 or 40, 50 years of their livelihood. But one thing I do believe out of everything that I've read, reading will continue to be very, very important. Obviously, a lot of the jobs for high pay appear to be right now, at least on the surface, robotics and computer science and programming and engineering and various forms of that. But still, a foundation of that is going to be reading. So as we looked at this long summer, ending June 1st for students, or beginning June 1st for students, and not ending until the day after Labor Day, we started thinking about what could we do for our summer reading program. I read in a book yesterday some research. I was really surprised by this, and I want to continue to do a little follow-up. But students who read on their own at home for an hour a day, read outside the school day an hour a day, and I'm not sure if it was 5 days a week or 7 days a week, generally score in the 98th percentile or higher on standardized tests. I believe it said students that read 4.6 minutes or more outside of school on their own score at least the 50th percentile. But for students that don't read at all outside of school, score closer to the 2nd percentile. So that was one research study. I don't know how accurate it is. I want to continue to do some other research, probably follow up with my reading support here with Laura Hanks and Carly Pumphrys, who we've had 3 or 4 several hour-long conversations about reading in Washington County. You know, if that information kind of aligns with other research, but we want to make sure our children are reading. The summer reading program is very important to that. It's kind of our kickoff year, so we'll probably go through some growing pains, but we look forward to the excitement of being able to use the iPad as well as hard copy book, some video information we have available to our parents, just a lot of exciting things, and this thing's going to grow as we move into the future. So I'm very, very excited about that, and our other plans for reading. If I can give one more commercial for Ms. Hanks and Carly. They ran a workshop last year for teachers. I believe we had 4 or 5 teachers sign up for it. We've set the exact same workshop up this year. Over 180, I think, is our current total for the workshop. It's running on several different, it's a 2-day workshop. And she sent me some of the evaluation information from our first round of this that was yesterday and today. And I don't think the best, I just sent her a note a few minutes ago, I don't think the best movie in the world ever got ratings like this. So, I mean, it's like 100% of the teachers were satisfied with the training. A huge percentage of them plan to use it in their classroom. So I'm very excited about what we have in store for reading for the future and how it's going to benefit our students. And this is something you're going to continue to hear something about in future meetings. But right now, for our summer program, I'll just turn it over to Dr. Mike Kahanick, Ms. French, and Ms. Hanks, who have worked very, very hard, along with a lot of other support from Dr. Pugh's team to pull this off, and also the support of our principals and teachers as well.
Good afternoon, President, Board, Ms. Williams, Vice President, Mr. Stauffer, and Superintendent Dr. Michael. We're pleased to come here today to speak about the Summer Learning Program. This would be in addition to many of the traditional efforts that we always had, like the ESY services and summer school programs. And we thought the best way to start this off would be an informational video that we recently released to the public this past week, starting actually yesterday in our social media, and to kind of show the board and highlight it and then speak to a little more detail to it and then give you the opportunity to field questions for us at the end. So we'll start with the video.
It's summertime, Washington County Public Schools. Time for swimming pools, baseball, and Cracker Jacks. But before you head to your favorite ice cream parlor to pick up a cone, head over to the Hagerstown Library and pick up a few books. Read throughout this summer, enjoy the stories, or conduct a science experiment, with adult supervision, of course. Remember, learning never ends. Times have changed. The way students perceive the world around them does not fit into a one-way broadcasting of facts. Access to information is no longer controlled by walls and calendars. Our students now live in a digital world, one that is perpetually available. What was once a limited option is now a wide-open channel of opportunity. This opportunity for anywhere, anytime learning is a reality for all students in Washington County through the WCPS Summer Learning Program. Head over to the new iParent portal on WCPSMD.com and discover details and information concerning the Summer Learning Program, iPads, and community accessible learning videos. Students, parents, and community members can learn Google tools, iPad and MacBook basics, and several social media options. The WCPS Summer Learning Program provides leveled texts and resources to meet each student where he or she is and allow for progressive learning. Reading, math, and science are not the only contents covered. Digital citizenship resources are also available for discussions about the importance of being mindful while using digital tools. Resources can be accessed on any connected device or by picking up an iPad from your home school. If an iPad is your preferred method, you will find preloaded apps and access needed for continued learning throughout the summer. Contact your home school for June and July pickup dates. Enroll in iCoverage. Choose your Wi-Fi preferences and open the door for continued learning. For those in grades 3 through 12, this iPad becomes the exact one your student will use throughout the 2017-2018 school year. So once your iCoverage is taken care of, there will be no need to repeat the process in August. Simply have your student bring it with them on the first day of school and watch them continue to grow as a lifelong learner. Through a partnership with the Washington County Public Library, all students can check out books at any library location by using their student ID number. This joint effort reflects the shared vision that learning never ends. We truly believe that learning is not limited by time or location and hope you will take advantage of the WCPS Summer Learning Program.
All right. So this is actually incredibly exciting news that we've been working several months and hoping that we were going to able to come to this conclusion, because what happens is that digital learning plan that we had in place, and through the work of the year, we realized the new possibilities that happen and can happen for our students. So working together with a, well, let me review the agenda we're going to go on first. Do they have the presentation up there?
PowerPoint's not on the screen at this point.
There you go.
It's up. Go.
All right, so the availability of the iPads to put them in the hands of every student allows us to personalize learning throughout the summer for students. And we're going to share with you 4 things that we're going to go through today, which is the iPad option that students have. Some families may choose to have an iPad, some may not, based on their summer availability and plans. So we have 2 options for families. We're going to look at the resources available very quickly for you. We're going to take a look at the iParent portal and our communication plan to make sure that people in the community know that this is available to them. So the exciting part of this is the library media services coming together with our Office of English Language Arts and our incredible technology team. It really meant marrying all 3 of those departments to make this happen. And so it is a result of a lot of collaborative work. Because the option became available and we were able to do this, we were able to also expand beyond just books to look at, we worked with our math, science, and social studies teams to say, now that we can do this and we've learned that we can do this, what are other options do we have to put in the hands of students this summer? So based on every student in our district takes what's called the MAP assessment. and that is given in the fall, winter, and spring. On the spring assessment, we're able to grab what Lexile level students are reading at. We've talked about that, how that can fluctuate a little bit, so it's really a Lexile band. That information, our technology department was able to pull that to create student profiles. When a student walks onto our campus, logs into an account on an iPad, it reads their profile, what their reading level is. And in some miraculous alignment of the stars, technology managed to get that to drop a Lexiled list. Now, see, I can do the part of we can help pick the books. Jonna is able through media services to find the books and make them accessible, easily accessible, so that students didn't have to use a ton of login names and features and go here or there. It is an absolute click, open, and read feature. So we have a list of books for every student at their exact reading level. Now that is what is dropped to the iPad when they select to do that. But we've put now hundreds of books into their hands because we don't prevent them from moving to other levels. They can take a look at any library that's out there for them. So that's a huge excitement. I'm going to let Jonna speak a little bit more about what resources are at their fingertips. And Mike.
The first thing I'm going to share is that we did start this week where parents can come to the school and they can get out an iPad and they can sign them out. We've been communicating that through Connect 5 and many different vehicles of communication. And so far we've had some pretty good activity. We ran a pilot last week at Springfield. We had 25 parents show up and they were very excited about this opportunity. The parents do also have a Wi-Fi selection. I think that's important for you to know as board members. So for students, for example, who may be being watched by siblings or someone who is not as mindful or has that presence, parents can rest assured that if they want to, they can have the Wi-Fi turned off on the device. So it only works on WCPS networks. So they can download the books at the school, go home. The books would be the only thing they can access. They can't access social media, text features, and those things. And the iPad would basically be used just as a reading tool, a digital library. But they could also come to a parking lot if they can reach access, which most of the time you can't even in a parking lot, or come into a school and download more books or get new updates. So the iParent portal we wanted to just highlight is now accessible on the main page, and it has several features. One is if a student does not want to do the iPad, in other words, say I already have plenty of devices and I'm a parent that wants to have the opportunity to do a summer learning program, but I don't necessarily need to come in and get an iPad. I already have plenty of electronics. You can go into the iParent portal, you can click on it, and if the student logs in with their Google account, they can still access all the textbooks that are available to them with the iPad as well. The Google account, of course, is important for the copyrights to ensure that the licenses are going to WCPS students. In addition to that, we also have the iParent, which you'll love that, right?
So legal.
So in addition to that, we also have the launching, which you saw is the training videos. Those training videos were open up to the public by Dr. Michael and staff to make sure that the parents can have access to how to use an iPad, how to use a MacBook, how to use the Google Suite, and also to use social media. The purpose behind training parents a little bit in social media was because many of our schools do their main communications through social media, and we feel that they could be better communicating with the school if they know how to navigate Facebook and Twitter accordingly.
So as Laura already mentioned, we had worked together to come up with some Lexiled book lists. We basically selected a company that gave us access to what we call unlimited simultaneous use titles. We own the books. We don't have to renew them every year. And any number of kids can access them at any given time. The links that we provided in the Lexiled book lists take you directly to the books. No username and password required after you log into the Google account. So as Laura also mentioned, we don't have to worry about, does Salem Avenue know what their login, does Bester Elementary know what their login is. The links take you directly to the individual book titles. Once the student has clicked on the book title, the book will open. They are what we call interactive ebooks. They are not just the print text on a page. The student has the ability to move forward and backward by swiping through the pages. There is a functionality that they can turn on that the book will be read aloud to them, automatically advancing, or they can control it. They can also control whether they want the words to be highlighted as the books are read to them. And there's also a table of contents and a glossary available for the students if they come across words that they might not know. The additional resources piece of it was developed because every school has some different access. They might have different subscriptions than their neighboring schools. So we put together lists of what we're calling additional resources that cover everything from literacy to math, science, social studies, and also digital citizenship. So any of the schools can go in and click on their individual link. They'll get a list of things like all of our subscription databases that we pay for as a school system, things that are available through Washington County Free Library with the Rail Card program now, apps that were recommended by the Math, Science, Social Studies Department, and some educational games and activities that teach kids about digital citizenship.
So this gives you kind of a quick look at some of the apps that are available to the students through these links. You'll see opportunities to take some virtual field trips through the Smithsonian. They have that, access to that. There's also magazine subscriptions. For example, students that want to read Sports Illustrated Kids, when they open up that, that subscription, that magazine, they actually have access to all the previously published articles and magazines. The other benefit to this is because that we own these books. Coming into the school year, we now have access to all of these permanently. So it is our hope that over time, we'll be able to expand this library, which means that using the digital devices, even at the start of the school year, every student will have an independent reading library in their hands. So it's a huge celebration. Also, through some work, and this is a lot of our Food Services Department has done a lot of work with our meal truck and in coordination with the Bookmobile. Our Bookmobile will be traveling to many of the same sites, same times as our meal machine, so that as students are receiving their meals at their scheduled times, the Bookmobile will come in. They are able to use now, again, as Mrs. French said, their rail card. They can use their student ID and check out books on the Bookmobile. And students are able to check out up to 3 books with no penalties for late fees. And so that is a service to our students in the county, so that is excellent. If you do hear of any locations where the Bookmobile is not going to, they have assured me it is because the bus actually can't fit in that area. So they have tried to go to every single location the meal truck is, but they're just not able to navigate some of those streets. In some cases, they have selected a fire station or something close to that area so that the community will know, and advertisements will be made so parents know that.
So we're going to continue to communicate. Schools have been tasked to communicate their pickup dates because they vary from school to school, but there are 3 pickup dates starting this week, and the next week they'll have another pickup date, and then they'll have another pickup date in the second week of July after the 4th of July break, in which students and the community can come down. One of those is set at evening hours at every school as well for working families during the day, and we're very excited about this. I do want to give a quick thank you to Mr. Kevin Tresler and Bill Bagner, who are not here today, but were instrumental in making this happen, especially from the IT department. And it was a huge partnership. We do plan on changing the naming conventions, but keeping the platform the same when the school year starts, so that this continues to grow. And as Dr. Michael echoed earlier this morning, or just a little bit ago, you know, this is something that we believe is a starting point. It's an access point for many students. It's kind of a change, a shift. I've never heard of any district doing anything like this. And we're very excited to be part of it and hope you are as well. And the library is open to you as well, as long as you sign in with your Google account. So I'm not sure if it's going to be as good as Dr. Michael's reads that he's reading right now, but it is open to you as well.
Thank you. Excuse me, you'll have to wait. I'm too excited. I can't contain myself. I don't read. As you know, I don't read much. This is just so very exciting to have this kind of accessibility for our students, because for them to become better readers, they have to be able to read. And to be able to read, you have to have a book. And for many of our kids, they just don't have those. They don't have them in their homes. It's too much trouble for their parents to take them to the library. I mean, this is just, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So I thank you for all the thinking and innovation that went into this. And we truly are on the cutting edge here. So kudos to you. I just couldn't be any more excited about this. This, along with the program, the rail program, I just think that we're opening up venues for kids that they never had in the past. I can remember times when we would want to send books home for the summer with kids and then worry that we'd get them back in order to be able to use them to teach them when they returned in the fall. Phenomenal. Thank you. Mr. Stauffer.
I just wondered, I used to help my wife do the reading baskets in her elementary classroom. I'd look up the Lexile levels on the computer when I could find the name of the book on there and everything. So is this going to take place of the reading baskets? Or are they still going to have the reading baskets
Oh, my
in the rooms?
heavens,
where
no,
they-
that hurt. No, we still need actual books in the
Okay.
hands of students, but this is a great alternative, as you said, to access just a wide wealth and variety of text for students.
Okay.
Miss French did do a nice job making some engaging. A lot of the books are very interactive, so it's awesome. Especially the beginner reader ones are really well illustrated and very interactive.
Mrs. Fisher?
How did you initially let each of the parents know that this was available? Did you just send letters home with the kids, or?
No, we needed to make sure we could do this. We had a lot of ideas, but we needed to see how we could put it all together. The initial communications went out through the school-based social medias, the school-based interactions, but we also did district-wide Connect 5 alerts and emails, phone call and email. We also did the social media. We also did WHAG last week, and Harold Mel's in the room. We'll be happy to interview with them if they're interested as soon as we're done here. So we just want to keep growing it because, to your point, it's new, it's novel. It's not going to be an automatic thought of what the benefits are of it until you actually dig into it.
Well, I'm along with Ms. Williams. I'm just thrilled at this. I was going to suggest, I didn't know you'd already used the message call-out system. I was going to say, why don't you do that like once a month for the rest of the summer in case you miss some people or they need to be reminded because they've gotten busy and forgotten. The other thing I was interested in is based on the various book lists that are tied to the Lexile scores, about how many books at a time can be downloaded by a student?
We purchase probably about 10 to 20 books per Lexile level. They can be accessed through the internet without having to be downloaded. But if a child chooses the no Wi-Fi option, or let's say a parent is taking the children to the beach and they want to download them beforehand, the Capstone Interactive app, which is the type of book that we're using, can accommodate to 20 books at a time downloaded into the app. Now they can always remove a book and then download a new one once they can clean that out basically and then repopulate. If, like to Laura's point, we're encouraging them to start at the Lexile band we assigned them based on the map testing, but they can go to any Lexile level basically and read above or below if they want to too. So they're not just stuck with that particular list of books.
That's great.
Did you want to say something?
I did ask Dr. Michael if we'd use the phone system as well. It makes me think maybe the board members should be on it because I'm not a parent anymore. I do miss getting the phone calls. So, but I too echo all my colleagues are saying that I think this is fantastic. It seems like you're linking it with the meal machine is getting to the people that we especially want to take advantage of this. And anytime you can get reading into, make it easier for kids to read, I'm all for it. So congratulations.
And I dare say the parents will be picking these things up and reading them as well, and that's an added benefit, I would think. So maybe there's the opportunity to expand literacy among our parents with offerings that you put on us. Think about that a little bit.
Maybe I missed. Do we have an estimate of how many children we think will participate in this summer? I mean,
It's really new and novel. We do know that we've already started talking with the companies. We can monitor, we believe we can monitor access to the text. In other words, how many times each text has been accessed. Obviously, you can't do duration because some of them are online or some could be downloaded, so you can't say like how long they were engaged in the text. But we are going to get some analytics back, and we asked the schools to report back their enrollments. But the schools just started this week for the first time, so I don't have a prediction on that. And again, to Ms. Fisher's point, it's brand new, so the communications I think is going to be paramount. I think we'll have the best success as broadly as it's communicated.
do you see this more as an elementary, middle school thing than a high school thing? I mean, do you think you'll get participation from the high schools? I mean,
The access and the levels go pre-K through 12.
Right.
So everyone can access it. It's a digital device, so even students on their phones in high school can pull up some of the books. I think maybe the older our students get, the more they'll be interested in the subscriptions. But some of the texts that were selected are, as Dr. Kahanik said, highly engaging. There are some, like if you're a history buff, there's some great history text on there. But we've got science, we've nature, we have all different topics and texts they can read.
Can you name one of the history books, just out of curiosity? I mean, anybody know? I mean,
Well, there are
I don't mean
several
to
that are
put you on
specific
the, I don't mean to put you on the
right?
spot, but I'm just curious.
No, I think
Historical fiction, I'm going to clarify.
I've seen
I don't read fiction.
all over social media, individual schools saying, you know, today's the day, come get your iPad, come get started on your summer learning. Are they doing anything with the marquees at the schools to let parents know, you know, not everybody has
I know, I
social
just
media
drove
that
past one the other night and I saw it on
saw
the
something.
sign, but I can't remember which one it
I
was
just-
in passing, yeah.
just occurred to me that that might be a good
Yeah.
thing to do too, to let kids know that
I think
parents
a
know.
a big part of what we still need to do is continue to promote it throughout the summer. We're also looking for ways, is there a way to continue to contact students beyond them just picking up their initial download of their books or things like that? Again, I just think we're going to have a whole host of ideas as the summer rolls out that will enhance it next year, but we're going to absolutely do all we can to make it a very big success this year. One of my vacation reads I was assigned to by my reading teacher I read yesterday about independent reading, and a big part of that was several things. Self-selection by the student to be able to self-select the book that they want to read makes a big difference. If you're assigned a book and it's a book that you don't have any interest in, very difficult, especially during summertime, to read that. So the students are going to be able to self-select from a variety of books, which I think is very important. Another thing that I understood from my homework assignment was a wide variety of genre is very important, that students read a whole variety of texts. So not only fiction or whatever, nonfiction, but all types of things, poetry and whatever. A third part that I remember I read yesterday was classroom libraries of 300 to 600 books. Imagine that many books. You were talking about a book basket, but you're talking about a book basket maybe per student or for a period of time, and then students would get another book as the year went on. So looking for ways to expand our book basket or our book library, not only in hard copy, but also in electronic copy. So I think this has all types of implications, not only for the summer, but going into the school year. And the team has worked extremely hard. Maybe we wish we had a couple more weeks to roll it out to make a bigger deal of it before students left, but we're not going to give up on that yet for the summer. And I look forward to a lot more of what's going to come as we work on our students being on grade level and above readers. That's an all-out goal of ours at this point.
I would like to add, as early as last week, we were still adding things to this. Paula Moore worked with us, and we have also added ELL and bilingual titles to the book list as well for the schools that she selected and felt that those needed to be available. So we're still adding to as we can and we find the resources. So.
Well, I hope you'll come back in the fall and let us know how things worked out. And
Share a lot
I
of
look
success
forward
stories
to, I
and
look
some
forward to
lessons
hearing that.
learned. I know a lot of the parents were concerned, of the long summer. And one of the things I did just recently tell them, it says, oh, we're not closed. They just have a different way of learning. So now you need to get online and get some books. So, and they were like, oh, I heard about that. So, I think as that gets out, it grows. Every year you're going to see more and more success. And, what more can you say? I mean, I think, like you said, we're on the cutting edge of, something great, and we just keep moving forward. So thanks for you guys for doing that and putting it together, because I know it's always something new and challenging. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Only other thing I wanted to report today, I met last week with Jim Kirchbull and Paul Fry to talk a little bit about the On Track initiative. They came and shared with the board a month or two ago. It's just kind of a birth through graduation, college graduation effort. So looking at ways to help from the time a child's born, pre-K initiative, while they're in school, seeking funds to help them enroll in college and potentially have free college education, at least for the first couple of years. So our On Track initiative, we have several staff members, Matt Semler, Stacy Henson, participate on the committee. I attend when I can, some subcommittees of those groups. So that's something we're going to continue to follow, probably going to be bringing a recommendation to the board how they might be able to better support that initiative here in the future.
Great.
So that's all I have for today. In the interest of time, I know we have another important meeting coming up here in a half an hour.
We do. Thank you, Dr. Michael. Mr. Trotta, our next agenda item is consideration and vote on a decision and order.
Good afternoon. The Board of Education is being requested to consider and to vote on proposed decision in order 2017-001. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to adopt decision and order 2017-001.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Any questions or discussion? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of adoption of the decision in order 2017-001? 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trotta. And that brings us to personnel action. Dr. Pugh.
Hello again. Seeking approval for the personnel actions discussed earlier in closed session today.
Is there a motion?
So move.
All right. Mr. Stelfer is moving for approval of the personnel actions discussed earlier in closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gesford. Any discussion or questions for Dr. Pugh? All those in favor? 6-0. Thank you very much.
President,
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
That's
President
all right.
Williams, if I might, I just want to bring attention to a couple principal appointments today. Christine Corbeil will be the new principal at Clear Spring Middle School. Ryan Hinch will be the new principal at Hickory Elementary School. Keith Alshouse will be the principal at Sharpsburg Elementary School, and Mr. Matt Huffman will be the principal at Smithburg Middle School. Also today on today's agenda, Larissa Richmond will be the new supervisor of Food Nutrition Services, and we look forward to all those people in their new roles and joining our team differently. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to board committee reports. Mrs. Fisher, would you like to start?
Oh, sure. The policy committee met on June the 7th. There had been no new comments or questions submitted concerning the 3 fundraising policies, so they were, of course, scheduled for first read today, and they passed. The committee then worked on prioritizing the next set of WCPS policies to begin updating, along with new policies and policy updates that have recently been required either by legislation passed at the most recent session in Annapolis or by the State Board of Education. 2 standouts in that set are, first, the legislation requiring heroin and opioid education in the public schools, along with making available and dealing with the administration of naloxone for students who may happen to overdose. The second piece of legislation that's pretty important is covering the attendance policy for pregnant or parenting students. There will be some changes to that policy. And our next meeting is scheduled for July 13th. As far as Curriculum and Instruction Committee, we will be meeting again in August.
Okay, thank you,
That's
Mrs.
it.
Fisher.
What time are we meeting on July 13th? 9?
I believe it is. Wait, I can check it here.
While she's checking, Mr. Gesford? You wanna-
No report from our standing committee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bickford?
Finance Committee met and discussed, had a very productive meeting, and many of the items were voted on today. And we are next meeting, we scheduled it for August on the 22nd, Tuesday the 22nd at 8 a.m.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bickford. Ms. Greenwald?
Thank you. A 10-member board was elected in May for the Washington County Association of Student Councils and was officially seated. An advisor workshop was held in June, and 2 additional workshops will be held in August. General Assembly meetings have been scheduled for September 26th, November 28th, January 9th, March 13th, and May 30th, with locations to be determined. And there will also be leadership retreats on October 18th for middle school and October 25th for high school here at Central Office. And I can put all of that in an email and send that out to you guys.
That would be appreciated. Thank you very much. Did you have that time?
Mr. Stafford, the meeting is at 2 p.m. in our board meeting room.
2 p.m.?
Thank you.
Yes, there were a number of, I think people, members and staff members also had other activities in the morning, so.
Okay, all right.
Moving on to future agenda items. Today in agenda planning, we made some changes that I'd like you to be aware of, and we can send this out to you in an email. There was a request to adjust some start times for our meetings for the summer, and we discussed that. We have an upcoming meeting on July 11th that's kind of off our regular schedule. That will remain at the time that we had designated earlier at 10:30 is the closed session, 1 o'clock will be the business meeting. Then we have decided that we will not have a meeting the first week of August. That would have been August 1st. Instead, we're going to have one meeting in August, on August 15th, and that meeting will be 3:30 closed session, 6 o'clock business meeting. We are going to have September meetings on the 12th and the 26th. Again, that's off our usual meeting schedule because the first Tuesday is the start of school. So we decided to make an adjustment there. And then in October, our meeting dates will be the 3rd and the 17th.
Back on schedule of October.
Back on schedule for October. So also I'd like you to make you aware of 2 dates for board retreats. July 25th, we're looking at a time of 9 to 5, and a second date, August 8th, it's time tentatively 9 to 1. So if you would make note of that. And I think that's all I have for future agendas. And we'll move to board member comments. Ms. Greenwald, would you like to start?
Sure.
Thank you.
I want to begin by broadly thanking some of the people and groups who have made my board service possible. Thank you to our dynamic and competent senior staff, our amazing board secretary, Deb Chekovic, and the awesome secretaries at North High, particularly Mrs. Mattingly, who was the executor of my wild schedule. Thank you to the Social Studies Department, and Mrs. Hanks was actually here for a little bit, and its leadership team that oversees the county SGA. And thank you to my incredibly caring and talented teachers, Principal Mr. Alshire, IB Coordinator Mr. Jackson, and Counselor Ms. Eck, for supporting me in this endeavor and for creating a schedule that allowed me to miss an extraordinary amount of class to fulfill my Board of Ed and County SGA commitments. Lastly, thank you to our current and former board and superintendents for their incredible support, respect, and camaraderie. In particular, I'd like to thank Dr. Hardings, Mrs. Brightman, Mr. Eidenauer, and Dr. Wilcox for the patient, benevolent, and extraordinary way that they supported my transition onto this board. And truth be told, their support never really stopped from there, even as some of them no longer serve in this county or on this board. That group empowered and emboldened me to such a degree that I honestly believe that the substance and meaning of this position is owed to them and their unabiding efforts. Additionally, I would like to congratulate Dr. Hardings on his recent and well-deserved appointment to the Maryland State Board of Education. I want to thank all of the aforementioned entities and people for treating me with a really significant amount of respect. I think that it is a quite unique experience that I, as a student member, rarely had to fight for my voice to be heard. This board, leadership team, and its employees have consistently encouraged me to tackle issues of substance and advocate on behalf of all WCPS students. Another group to which I owe many thanks is the students who elected me first in 2015 and then again in 2016. These students and many others engaged in critical and meaningful discussions that significantly shaped the initiatives that I pursued and the way I approached certain votes. Without student engagement, with WCASD being a really meaningful vehicle, this position in my service would have no meaning or potency. So thank you to those students who led and advocated with me. Before I wrap up my last comment, I want to talk a little bit about a part of Dr. Michael's superintendent report at our last meeting. I was not in attendance then, so I will use some time now to talk about how thrilled I am to see the expansion of the International Baccalaureate program. As my colleagues know, a couple of weeks ago, I graduated from North High as a very proud IB student. There are not enough positive things that I can say about the content of the academics, the teachers, the coordinator, and my peers in the IB program. Without a doubt, choosing to be an IB student was the best and most critical academic decision that I've ever made. Small learning communities like IB make big schools feel very small and create positive, need-based learning environments. It's my great hope that this board will continue to advocate for the preservation and expansion of current small learning communities while innovating new, niche, and exciting programs of the like. Additionally, I hope that strides can be made so that more students, particularly ones who don't fit the typical mold, are able to thrive in these programs. To be a little bit more specific, I think that means greater outreach, the expansion of programs, and in some cases, financial assistance to mitigate the astronomically high test fees that our board partially covers. It's our duty as a school system to ensure that arbitrary factors like financial standing don't obstruct any student's chance to expand the trajectory of their future. I'm excited to be an advocate as important issues like closing the achievement gap and expanding opportunities for financially strained students will continue to be addressed and solved by this local and statewide school system. In closing, serving on this board has been one of the best pleasures, most intense responsibilities, and the greatest honor of my life thus far. So thank you.
Thank you. Well said. I am very proud of you and your accomplishments. I know when I first started regularly attending board meetings, I was extremely impressed when they called on you because I think you take it as seriously as the rest of us, and it shows, and I think that's one of the reasons why you've had the impact that you've had. So I think a lot of that is your credit too. To your credit too. The only thing I would have to say, I had the honor of being part of the opening of the cultural trail downtown. If you haven't strolled along it yet, I invite you to do so. It is very impressive. I will even say my mother wanted to attend, which says something about it because she wanted to walk that walk, and she doesn't walk as well as she used to. So she was determined to walk the trail and was very impressed as well. So please give it out there and give it a try because I think it's a major step forward for our downtown area.
I want to thank Ms. Greenwald for her service to the board. And I look forward to July 1st when we can discard the title of interim superintendent and you have the title of superintendent. I think we made a good choice, and I know you work hard. I'm impressed with your work ethic, and I know you'll do the best for this system, lead the system where it needs to go in the future. I truly mean that.
Mr. Gaspard.
I have nothing for today.
Fisher. Well, first I'd like to thank Erica for her hard work and her dedication for 2 years to the board, not just one. That's really going above and beyond. And I'd like to say I wish you all the success. You don't need the wishes, though. I know you will succeed in whatever you finally decide on. It's been a pleasure. We'll miss you. We'll also miss Mr. South. He's been a fixture around here ever since I was first elected to the board back in 2002. And I think a lot of other people agree he will be missed. Finally, I just want to say the retirement celebration last week, I think, was one of the best retirement celebrations I've attended over the years. And I want to thank all the staff that were involved in putting that together.
Thank you. I know we have something else coming up here very quickly at 4 o'clock. I would like to thank Erica as well, and thank you for your stellar service, Erica, for your dedication. And I wish you a wonderful summer. Get ready for college. I wish you all the best there. I know you'll do great. I hope you'll come back and visit us and let us know all the great things that you're doing. And to Mr. South, it's been a pleasure working with you. I hope you'll come back. I hope to see you serving on board advisory committees and doing all kinds of great things. So enjoy your retirement. You'll be missed. So with that, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.